Well, we're alive.
Yeah, that's something, isn't it?
Raph and I are teaming up once more, but yeah, man, Raph, it's been like ages since we last talked. You know?
Yeah, right.
Just
Yeah,
no, I'm
under
kidding.
24 hours, that's for sure.
Yeah, it was a very long 24 hours.
Yeah,
I
true.
was thanking you for showing me that article that Joe
Yeah.
Abercrombie wrote. So,
Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, I read your message, of course.
And Tharnal, of course, as always, is very he's like the most loyal fan on my streams. So thank you, Tharnal. You're a true one.
Hey.
This is a bit abrupt. Like I wasn't planning on doing a stream today, but Raph was kind of like, "Hey, so Matt's not doing a stream today. You just want to hang out?" And I'm like, and he's like, "So what are we gonna do?" I'm like, "I don't know. You want to just do one?" And he's like, "Sure."
Yeah. Sure. Yeah, it was my alternative plan was to record a video, but since I managed to finally record a version of the On Stranger Tides video that I could feel at least not too uncomfortable about uploading, I already had a video for today, so I figured I'll not record a second one and instead just hang out with you.
Fair enough.
Cheers.
I did see. I did see you uploaded a I did see you uploaded a Stranger Tides video.
Yeah, like half an hour ago.
I was in church when it first came out, so
yeah, maybe that's not the place where you want to watch my videos.
No, probably not. My grandma would be like, "What the hell's that?"
Hey, Alicia.
She probably wouldn't even say that. She'd probably be like, "What's that? Why does he not have a tooth?" And I'm like, oh, "He had an accident. He's blind." They're like, "Oh, bless him." I'm like, "Well, yeah."
Yeah. And I do finally have access to the Adventures of Amina al-Sirafi. So I'm going to read that in the next couple of days, and I can add that one to Pirate Winter as well. So I'm excited for that.
So kind of like with Matt's show, if anyone wants to pop in and hang out for a little bit, just hit me up on Discord or comment or do whatever you want to do. I just don't like dox me or anything, and I will probably get you on. So yeah, don't worry, we're not salty about Matt not having a show. Sometimes you're not going to do it, I hear you, but
well,
I'm like, why don't we do our thing?
I think he like he said that he is feeling under the weather, and that's fair enough. It's winter, everyone is sick, yeah. And I for one hope that he'll get very soon. That's like the thing, right?
Well, of course, yeah. Yeah, sure, Alicia. Let me just probably gonna just Dimedrick Hayward. How you doing? I know you from Raph's channel. Because Raph does things.
Yeah, that's the thing. You don't know what a Demidrek is yet.
Is that like a D&D monster? Because it sounds a little familiar.
No, it's a religious rank in the Malazan universe.
Oh, well, of course I didn't know that. Is it Birdie? Okay, yeah, it is. I'm like,
we're all procrastinating. That's kind of what people do most of the time. But yeah, so I'm very excited to get to the Adventures of Amina al-Sirafi. Although the next video for Pirate Winter will be Jordan MacDonald Fraser's The Pirates, which I read last week, 2 weeks ago, and it's so much fun. But it's also a book that I don't think you could get past any publisher today. It is using a lot of very problematic language, to put it mildly. No, I think you're right there, Thornell. It is the first step on the way to progress. I mean, they both start with pro, right? That's good. Pro is good.
Yes. Pro is often good thing.
Pro is always good, yeah. Although I'm not a pro in anything. Anyway, so yeah, what have you been up to the rest of the day so far, Britton? I mean, I know it's much earlier for you. What with you know, living on this other continent?
I'm probably gonna. Well, hold on. In case she doesn't see it on Discord, I will show her. I will share it on Instagram to her. So there we go. I'm gonna double whammy.
Hey, Oso.
Oso's here. What am I gonna be doing? Well, after this, I'm probably going to write a review for my job.
Oh, nice.
Then I'm probably going to write some poetry for a class because, you know, I'm taking a poetry class right now, which I'll admit, not much of a poet, but I'm giving it a crack, you know. Sometimes you're at late at night and you just crank it out, you know.
Hey, mod irregular. Hey, what that? Yeah, that makes that only makes you more scary there.
Or Robin, how you doing? No, Britton with bars. Well, I'm no Samuel Coleridge, unfortunately, or William Blake for that matter. But I'm giving it my best shot. No, yeah, I'm also probably gonna read some more of the Yiddish Policemen's Union. So you know that's always a thing.
Hey, Osa.
All right. Oh, and look who's here, but Alicia.
Hi.
Birdie in the books. How you doing, Alicia?
I'm not dead anymore, so we're good.
That's good. So, like, did Jesus show up in the middle of the night and was like, "You were raised, my daughter"?
I wish, but the first week of January I had the flu, and then the third week of January, someone at my boyfriend's job gave me COVID.
Oh, that's a nasty double whammy.
I'm okay now, but January just needs to end at this point.
That's a nasty double whammy right there.
I felt better, and then like 3 days later, I got COVID. I was like, I can't.
It's bad.
Oh, man.
I quit.
Not good. No, but also said I just watched a video on making better fantasy maps, but not like accurate geography, but more like creative to show up the culture and era, since maps weren't always so accurate. That's interesting. I'm curious.
I like
curious,
that.
I'm curious what video that was. I might want to watch that because I'm a bit of an aficionado of fantasy maps myself.
I enjoy them.
See, I just like slightly earlier. I watched a video, like a lecture from Gresham College on historical fiction from Walter Scott to Hilary Mantel.
All right,
I love historical fiction.
Yeah,
you know,
sometimes
it depends on the author for me. I'm picky.
You know, it's kind of like I know you love Jane Austen, Alicia, and I have a weird thing with Jane Austen, where
she's
like
not historical fiction.
I know she's not historical fiction, but like I know her stories, but I haven't actually like read her books. And I feel bad for that. I feel like I should have read Jane Austen by now.
Yeah,
you know.
If
she
you
got a
want
mention in the lecture,
I can
though.
give you one.
A what?
If you want a recommendation, I can give you one.
Sure, Alicia. Recommend me some good Jane Austen books.
I think with what you like, you should start with Northanger Abbey.
All right. I was thinking maybe.
And that's exactly what I told Raph to start with.
All right.
Yeah, Northanger Abbey is the one where she makes fun of Gothic novels. So
it's hilarious.
Yeah, and she did actually come up in the historical fiction lecture anyway, because Walter Scott wrote something about Jane Austen where he was talking about like what he enjoyed about her writing style compared to his own.
Did he? I'll have to find that.
It's an interesting lecture. Like generally the Gresham College stuff is just really good because Gresham College is like one of those like weird prestige things that people in the UK have, where like all kinds of professors get like to do like guest lectures, and they're all online on YouTube, and they have like stuff on astrophysics and climate science.
So any
and
random
literature.
shit that you find interesting, you could find.
Yeah, you can always find like lecture series on all kinds of topics, and there was one on
cool.
English literature, and the ones that I usually watch is the stuff that Ronald Hutton does, because he does all the the fun bits and pieces about witchcraft and witch trials and witch persecution, witch hunting and dragons and paganism and all of that stuff. Seriously, Ronald Hutton, while being technically a professor of history at, I keep forgetting which university he's officially at, has all the really cool topics for his stuff. Like he wrote The Triumph of the Moon, which is sort of like still the standard history of like neo-paganism in a lot of ways. And then he wrote a history of the witch, a history of terror. He also is the guy he's one of the authors of the UN resolution against witch hunting.
All right.
Okay.
Which is something that sounds ridiculous before you think about it and realize that if you understand that like witchcraft is everything where people believe that someone harmed someone else through magic, then you realize that having a UN resolution against witch hunting is something that the world does unfortunately still need, because there are still people persecuted for those kind of crimes in the world.
You would like, I think you would like Son of the Storm by Suye Davies Okumbawa. He's a professor in Arizona.
Okay.
And he does African mythology based
nice
fantasy, sci-fi fantasy. So I would Son of the Storm is the first book in the series that he has out. That's fantastic. The audiobook
sounds interesting. I'll have a look. No, I've spent the day still reading Red Plenty by Francis Spufford, which I am really enjoying. It's a really interesting kind of book.
Nice.
It's basically a collection of sort of like short story vignettes, historical fiction about the Soviet Union from like the late 1950s to the early 1960s, around the Khrushchev era, and that moment where the Soviet Union was actually doing comparatively well and may have and had a chance of actually getting their economy fixed in a lot of ways, and how that then didn't happen and what maybe went wrong and so forth. So it's a really interesting kind of book, looking at like one of those parts of Soviet history that we often ignore, because it's easier from like a Western perspective to look at Stalinism and then of course the long decline after, the Sputnik era. And so having the stories about that brief moment where things weren't as bad is, nice and interesting. That brief moment.
Well, yes. Demodrick asks, what you reading, Britton? Well, I did mention it, but I'm reading the Yiddish Policeman's Union right now. I'm going to focus on it for the next couple days because I've been kind of slacking on it. But then Alicia will be very excited to hear this, but when February starts, I am going to be reading If Beale Street Could Talk by James Baldwin. I'm going to be reading that with Miss Alicia and Darko. I set up the Discord chat already, and then after that, I'm probably going to read Guards. So
another fantastic one.
So and then hopefully I'll harass Raph and get Derry to come on my channel and we can talk about it at some point. I don't know when that's going to happen. And also might read Mere Christianity because my dad's trying to get me to read it. He's like, Britton, you should read this, because bit of a funny story. He bought it and then he's like, hey, Britton, this book's really good. I think you'll like it. I'm like, hey, Dad, I think I actually own that book.
Oh, that's hilarious.
And it turns out I did own it. And he's like, well, damn, I could have just asked you. There you go.
My grandmother always says she doesn't go book shopping anymore. She just shops in my
house. I know of Otherland. I haven't read it. I have not read it. Isn't that his sci-fi series?
It is his sort of sci-fi cyberpunkish story, and it is not good. Like it suffers from the thing that is often a problem with Ted Williams, which is he's really good at world building and really bad at ending stories.
Who's good at ending stories?
So the thing with Otherland is, right, that there is this sort of like virtual reality, and people end up in that virtual reality, and the virtual reality has like all these different sort of like worlds, which are all modeled on different works of literature and stuff like that, right? There's one that is a bit like Oz with like flying monkeys and all of that stuff, and there's another one that is just constantly because they're basically video, right? One that is constantly replaying the Siege of Troy and shit like that, and they are making their way through that. And at the same time, there's obviously other stuff happening in the physical world, not in the virtual world, and those things combine, and it's okay, mostly, partly. The problem is that, yeah, he fucks up the ending and suddenly he does something that is not built up, that is not hinted at, and suddenly the whole thing is about something completely different at the end. The ending is just like really, really, really bad. There's other stuff in there that I don't know how well it has aged, but it's been like 20 years since I read it, so I'm somewhat dim on it. I found if you enjoy people jumping from planet to planet doing or from world to world doing stuff that is always a reference to some older literary work, then you can definitely get a lot of fun out of this specific book. And in that regard, it has a bit of a parallel, I would argue, to some elements of Hyperion, the Hyperion and Endymion cantos. Not so much Hyperion itself, but more like the later parts when they're doing much more planet hopping from place to place. Which kind of makes sense because it's sort of like it was written around the same time, like the mid 90s, when people were starting to think about virtual realities and shit like that in a way. So not essential. I think Memory, Sorrow, Thorn holds up much better.
Asia says, yesterday I started Lolly Willows. I'm sorry if I got that name wrong. About an English spinster who buys a home in the countryside and becomes a witch. Very, very British sounding.
That sounds like fun.
Yes. Very cozy. I don't hate cozy things. Like, would you call Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell cozy, Alicia?
No.
No. Sections of it, yes. Not the whole thing.
Okay, yeah, okay, I'll give you that. Sections of it are very cozy. I don't think it's a cozy read. Like, there's parts of it that are like, yes.
It would be like the first cozy Napoleonic War story, right?
Yeah. That would be brilliant.
No, but like, I mean, I have no idea what cozy means, but I would argue that Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell does have far too high stakes for it to be cozy at the end of the day. There's too much stuff, too much dramatic stuff going on.
And it's too snarky.
Yeah, that too. It's far more Jane Austen than anything else in that regard. Yeah. Jane Austen's not cozy.
That's a good point.
Yeah,
I am considering reading the Emily Wilde books, but I'm like, am I gonna just think it's too? Am I just gonna be like,
I have the first one if you want someone to read it with. I have the first one.
But I'm real hesitant. I'm like, am I just gonna say it's not Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell? That's not gonna be fair, and I'm gonna feel real bad, you know.
But I don't think it makes sense to compare those two because they're not even set in the same age, right? That's the first part.
Yeah.
And Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell is very, very explicitly like Regency England. That's key to the whole thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And just because Emily Wilde does have fairies in it, I don't know. There's enough other fairy books out there at this point. But I don't know. I haven't started reading it because I don't think I'm the kind of person who would enjoy this. I'd probably just be angry at it all the time.
If you want to try a cozy-ish book that's not like saccharine, try it's a book called The Spell Shop by Sarah Beth Durst.
I've seen the title. I thought like the one that is fun. Often okay.
Yeah.
I'm just not necessarily the kind of person who enjoys coziness. Like I.
Oh yeah. Everybody... And the Underground Railroad. I'm hoping to read by Colson Whitehead for Black.
Be prepared to feel very uncomfortable.
But and also apparently has a literal Underground Railroad. I'm like, that is awesome. I want to read about that.
He basically made it like a magical realism type of physical railroad. It was
anyway. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you guys.
It's a fantastic read. Highly recommend, but be prepared to feel extremely uncomfortable.
So yeah, basically just
yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's all fine. I've wanted to read Colson Whitehead for a while now. I just never knew where to start, and it's But Underground Railroad is obviously one of them where I'm like, that obviously Harlem Shuffle just sounds like a more fun one.
It's hard to call it fun, but he does turn some historical things on its head purposefully.
Yeah, I felt like more fun than Underground Railroad because not as bleak, I guess.
Do not. It's a fantastic book, but do not read the Nickel Boys if you're not ready to like read some horrible shit.
Oh yeah, I know.
It's one of the greatest books that I will never read again because of how.
So yeah, I'm going to be basically reading a bunch of love stories and African American stories throughout the month of February. This is kind of where I'm at. But I've not heard of Lady Trent. Sounds familiar. Like what is Lady Trent?
That's Lady Trent's Natural History of Dragons, and there's like 3 or 4 books in that series as well.
Oh
5.
yes,
the fifth one just came out 5.
But I haven't read them, obviously, because none of these books appeal to me.
Yeah.
These like natural history, academic, cozy, supernatural thing is just like totally not my thing.
Fair. I read it because I like epistolary novels, and that's basically what it is.
I'm not the hugest fan of epistolary. Like you have to be in a particular mood. Like Piranesi worked because it's like I don't know because the setting is so weird. But I don't know.
But Piranesi is not really epistolary either, right? I mean, it's sort of, maybe, but not really. It's more like just like a first-person narration in a lot of ways, I think.
Yeah, I'm probably gonna read some comics as well because, well, I'm trying to. I might for Year of Lemire this month. I'm probably gonna try Trillium, which is his sci-fi love story. So.
I'm trying to find copies of this one comic that I want to read.
And aside from that, I can't really think of any at the moment. But yeah, that's basically what I'm reading in February. I don't do TBRs very much, but that's kind of my TBR.
Yeah, I'm not doing. I don't do TBRs anymore. I just do weekly wrap-ups. It's easier.
God, yeah. If there are dragons in it, isn't that like supernatural? I don't know. I'm not sure if the dragons in there are only in the title, right? I mean, could be.
Well, dragons are technically animals, right? So, I mean, it's
that depends on your world's metaphysics, whether they're just like huge monsters, huge animals, or whether they're something different. You'll learn about that when you read Guards, which kind of asks exactly that kind of question, among other questions.
Oh, well, so I'm basically going to be reading a bunch of African-American books, love stories, and Terry Pratchett. So I'd say it'd be a pretty good month in February.
Okay, so
yeah, I'm going to be reading James Baldwin. I'm going to be reading the autobiography of Malcolm X.
Oh, that's a fantastic book.
Sounds like fun.
Never read it. I've read sections of it when I was in college. I'm going to read The Personal Librarian. Who was the librarian for J.P. Morgan, who, after she passed away, people found out she was a woman of color. And Jam on the Vine. It's
no.
It's No, you're fine. It's a literary fiction about the first all-black newspaper and the journalism that worked for the all-black newspaper.
Yeah, I mean, I read. Yeah, for this year, I'm like, you know what? I want to do another read along with another buddy read with Darko because our last one, Kindred, went so well last year. I'm like, I don't want to do another slavery one because, like, I don't want to become a pattern. So I'm like, hey, do you like James Baldwin? Let's just read If Beale Street.
I love James Baldwin. I read.
Oh, I do too. Giovanni's Room's great.
The Fire Next Time last year. That was fantastic. It made me cry. In like a good way. It was basically a letter he wrote to his nephew about how he has to protect himself, being a black man of that time period. And it's being like the oldest sibling as well. I'm an oldest sibling, so it's like part of that kind of just made sense to me.
Raph, I know you don't really do TBRs and all that, but like, is there anything you're hoping to read soon in upcoming month?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I already said that I'm finally going to read Adventures of Amin al-Sirafi.
Oh, yeah.
I need to know your thoughts on it because I loved it. I hope you don't hate it.
I'll find out. I'll find out in the next couple of days.
I hope you don't hate it. That's all I can ask for.
No. And when it comes to fiction, like new stuff coming out, I have no fiction that comes out in February. In March, there's of course The River Has Roots by Amal Al-Motar, which sounds very much like something between Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, and A Lot of Blood in the Mist, in like what I've seen from the back cover, which is about sisters living close to fairyland and stuff like that. So it sounds cool. I have the second part of the Oliver Cromwell biography by previously mentioned Ronald Hutton. That is coming out in audio in 2 weeks or so in February. And A History of the German Peasants' War is also coming out in February. So I'm going to read history books in February, I guess.
Nice. Is that the same author that wrote what is the name of that book?
Which one? Imaika, or which book are you looking for?
The Email Al-Mutar. Didn't she co-write something that came out?
She did. Yes, she's one. She wrote "This Is How You Lose the Time War" together with Max Gladstone. Yes.
Yep.
And she's a poet and literary critic, and this is like her first prose novel.
Okay, because I really liked "This Is How You Lose the Time War." I read it for a book club that I was part of.
Forgot to mute. I forgot to unmute.
Yeah, I was gonna say you muted yourself.
I was about to say I'm back, but Clive Barker is wild, and I've only seen Hellraiser. And I'm like, good lord, that man's got some skeletons. No. Good to read if you're mad at Neil Gaiman at the moment and want something kind of gaming-y. Clive Barker's a good little.
I would once again recommend A Fine and Private Place by Peter S. Beagle, which is probably the most Neil Gaiman ass shit ever written.
I saw I saw that The Last Unicorn was being at my bookstore, and it was calling to me. It was like, read me, Britton. I know you want to. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't really like unicorns. But then I read the first line. I'm like, damn. And I'm like, man, that is such a good line. I'm going to have to pick that up. Dang it. So, yeah, I'm hoping to get The Last Unicorn at some point. And maybe try some of Beagle's stuff. So I might have A Fine and Private Place. And the copy I saw had a foreword from, you guessed it, Neil Gaiman.
It's kind of frustrating why, like, I'm gonna record a video on Death of the Author by Nnedi Okorafor next, and
I know
it's really good. And when I also was looking at the thumbnail earlier today, it's like, well, there's one version of the Death of the Author cover that still has a Neil Gaiman quote on it. So that curse strikes once again, although they have replaced it with a George R. Martin quote now, which I think is probably a better choice right Lord. Now.
If I joked about this yesterday, but man, if George R. R. Martin gets called out, man, blurbs are gonna take they're gonna crash the ground.
I mean, if you take out Gaiman and George R. Martin, books will only have Stephen King quotes from then on.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. King's another guy who just blurbs like crazy. I'm like, dude, that is insane. I need to read Thief of All Ways. I've thought about picking it up. I just haven't gotten to it yet. I might actually make a video at some point called, "Hey, are you mad about Neil Gaiman? Here's some books that are kind of like Neil Gaiman if you're, kind of fiending a little bit." But that's I'm gonna. To not be too opportunistic, I'm going to wait a while before I do something like that.
Yeah. I mean, Oh yeah, right. That makes a lot of sense to have the George R. Martin quote on there. I don't know if the print book still has the or some versions of the print book still have the Neil
It's all
Gaiman quote
there.
on it. I hope not. Well, I mean, he's right. It's all there. Like, Death of the Author is just like I was very much impressed by how much it does at the same time, right? It deals with, the sort of like the difficulty of being Nigerian American versus being Afro American, and how those experiences of like having like a very being seen as black by people who don't know your background, but also having a very specific migrant background, how that is different. It also deals about like how it is to be paraplegic in a wheelchair and how to deal with that, and how it is about, being a woman and what it means to be suddenly famous and being put into this position of responsibility and so forth because you're seen as a star at some point, and all of these other things
specifically a
kind of
disabled
intersecting.
woman.
And then it's also a sci-fi book about robots.
Yeah. And specifically being with a woman with a disability, you don't see that often. So.
Yeah. Like the disability, the portrayal of disability in Death of the Author is very, very impressive. I mean, obviously, Nnedi Okorafor has her own disability, so you can tell that there is experience written into this. But it's just like really, really good at the whole. That conflict that is kind of tied into that, if you have like family and friends who try to shield you, if you have a disability, try to shield you from all kinds of stuff, and how that conflict.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also going to be reading
from my own personal experience. Yep.
I imagine you will recognize a lot of stuff in that book, Alicia.
Because she has a disability herself, she'll write it with care. Yeah. A lot of authors don't. They don't. Either they don't do the research, or they don't care to, and they just do like the verses bingo. Sorry, that's my hot take.
No, you're good. You're good. Yeah, no. Well, I am going to be reading a couple of other books that inspired Neil Gaiman, like Lud and the Mist and The King of Elfland's Daughter. So that's going to be fun.
So good. I love them.
Yeah, I know you did a video about Lud and the Mist a while ago. Ralph.
I did. I think it's an excellent book. I really enjoyed it. Yeah, I mean, there's no pirate stuff that I could potentially read, but I also want to, do other stuff again. I might, make a video on on Wizard of the Pigeons, which I really enjoyed. It's obviously a depressing book.
I've wanted to read Amal El Motar's book, the one you're about to read, because I've seen the cover at my local bookshop. I'm like, God, that's so beautiful. But like, am I gonna connect with it? But I'm not sure. We'll see. Not entirely sure.
I don't know. I feel very. I think it's kind of difficult to say because it read like the back cover kind of blurb kind of makes it look like the kind of fairy tale like Lud in the Mist sort of, and that's very different from like her the stuff that people have read from her by now, right? It's not a short story, so it doesn't have to follow the sort of like logic of the short story.
I thought it would be like Arabic inspired, which could be interesting because the Arabic has
I think it's very fairy, like British Celtic fairy.
Oh, okay.
But I'm not quite sure. I mean, we'll find out. Also, I mean, I don't know enough about Amal El Motar's like background. I mean, I know she lives in the UK and has lived there for a while, so the British connection makes a lot of sense there.
Then again, I probably shouldn't make too many assumptions about her name. That's not very enlightened of me, but thought might be a little Arabic, and I'm like, oh, that could be interesting. There's not a lot of like Arabic fantasy out there. I mean, I'm sure it exists. I'm not gonna like be a complete buffoon here, but I haven't read a lot of it. I want to read more Arabic fantasy. That's because Arabic have some pretty wild mythological stories.
I'm sure it's out there. You just have to dig for it because it's not like front facing, probably.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'll probably have to go.
There's a difference between people using elements from that, and it's easy to have like a lot of like really problematic Orientalism kind of creep into that, right? You have the whole like genie situation in Declare by Tim Powers going on. I mean, that's mostly set around Lebanon and Turkey and Mount Ararat in particular, because it's about Noah's Ark and stuff. So you have elements of that in there, and there's other books that do the same kind of stuff and take elements from different Middle Eastern traditions and use that for stuff, right? There's recently been I guess, myth, Sumerian or Babylonian myth retelling thing that I have only seen the title and not looked deeper into it, but there's stuff like that happening at the moment.
Oh shit! Why? Oh, I didn't mean to.
And I guess the beauty of a Sumerian myth retelling is that you can get away with that because no one will complain about you taking away like own voices from this from Sumerians. So I guess you're fine with that.
Oh yeah, didn't he write the Miss Marvel comics for a while?
Who?
Saladin
Yeah.
Ahmed and
Oh.
G. Willow Wilson. I have wanted to read the
G.
Bird
Willow
King
Wilson is
comic.
fantastic.
Have you read the Bird King? Because I've wanted to read that book for a while.
No,
No, all right. Have you read her?
but I have read her line of the Miss Marvel comics. That I
Oh, okay.
With
I need to read those.
I read Throne of the Crescent Moon years ago, and I did enjoy it at the time. I think I was unhappy with some bits and pieces, but it was certainly an entertaining kind of book. I remember it came out, and Scott Lynch was a big fan of it, and I was. The thing is, I remember reading Throne of the Crescent, reading that book, and then waiting for like a sequel, and nothing ever came of that. So I don't know. But yeah, if you want like a vaguely Arabic themed fantasy, but it's pretty like fast moving, has a cool kind of thief character kind of stuff. There's reasons why Scott Lynch kind of enjoyed it, I would argue. So if Gentleman Bastards is something that you enjoyed, then this one, I think,
I really enjoyed the first two Gentleman Bastards books, so I probably will enjoy that book. But you know, I won't assume anything. The retelling of the Epic of Gilgamesh would be fun. Yes, it would be. I'm curious how they would do the guy was a huge asshole and was a huge tyrant to his people, and then a guy came and they wrestled, and now he became good. You know, that'd be pretty fun to see. But you know, we'll see.
I'm sure, Thornell, there are retellings of the Epic of Gilgamesh. I don't necessarily know if those would be really interesting, because I mean, the Epic of Gilgamesh in itself is already pretty fucking cool. I don't know if you would gain a lot by
I've never read it.
MJ Kuhn, she's the co-host on the One Show, right? Damn it, the one that she does with it's not Fanfly Addict, it's maybe it is Fanfly Addict. I don't know. The show that with no, maybe that's someone else. The one with Adrian M. Gibson that she does. I think it's on Fanfly Addict. I could be wrong. Oh, thank you, Rebecca. I've wanted to read Salman Rushdie for a long time. I just don't know where to start. I've thought about just saying fuck it and starting with the Satanic Verses, because I just want to see what the fuss is about with that book, because dude got his eye stabbed out over it. So I'm like, I gotta see that.
It was a whole thing.
I mean, I don't mean to laugh.
Against him, and it was nuts.
I mean, I don't mean to laugh about it. It's horrible, but like, you know, it is something I'd like to read at some point, though. Oh yeah, I forgot about I don't know how to pronounce the guy's name.
Billy Clark.
I've wanted to read his the one about the KKK turning into Lovecraftian abominations.
Ring Shout,
yeah, that one.
It's fantastic.
It is probably SF.
It was my favorite book of the year when it came out.
Oh well, that's good. No, yeah, I read Gilgamesh in a mythology class I took a few years ago, and mythology is really fascinating subject, which I know, shocking revelation. But it's really interesting seeing how they connect, you know? Like, I like how all of them have a flood narrative, you know?
I think like the best part about the whole Gilgamesh storyline is the massive bromance between Enkidu and Gilgamesh, where they're like, yeah, well, we send the gods go like, well, Gilgamesh is getting on our nerves, so I guess we'll just get this other dude, and then they will fight, and they go out, and then they fight, and they become best friends, and just cause trouble together instead of one against each other and the other. And I'm like, yeah. There's a very good fundamental observation about certain forms of human behavior in that storyline.
The fatwa is extremely overrated by people who didn't read the book. Don't expect super controversial content. I get what you mean, Ori, but it's really funny that you say like a fatwa is extremely overrated. Like the dude got his eye cut out over it.
It's I know what you mean. I know what you mean, but like, you don't want something like that happening to you guys.
I don't want like friends and family getting murdered.
Yeah, like it's a whole thing.
But yeah, no, maybe Midnight's Children or something like that. I'm not sure.
I did read his 2 years, 8 months, and 28 days, which is sort of 1001 Nights retelling, postmodern, whatever thing. And it's okay.
I had to read that.
It's not very good. I think I just
read that in college.
Okay, I think I just
don't
really
know why, but they did.
Really don't like Salman Rushdie's voice, like writerly voice.
Oh,
I think he's getting he's too smug for my taste.
I was waiting for you because I've heard you go before, like, God, he could be such an arrogant jerk sometimes. I'm like, yeah.
I mean that too. He's a thing, right? He is a thing, right? Like, but it's kind of part of the problem with like what we were talking about. Like, Salman Rushdie comes from India, and while he is certainly dealing with like Islam, but like that's not Arabic fantasy. That's Indian fantasy, which because of parts of India being
no, it's okay, Ori. I was just teasing you.
I know
what you meant.
You know, being being ruled under, say, the Mughals and so forth, having Islamic influences doesn't make those Arabic in the way that something set in, say, modern day Iraq or like historical places like that. Those are different places, and I guess that's really one of those moments where like having some form of own voices kind of stuff is really important. Is that for a lot of Western people, it's still like, well, if it's got a turban and someone says the word Allah, I guess that's Arabic. It's like, no, that's not how that works.
No.
It's such a surface level, like.
Yeah, but it is very much still the case.
I know.
It's one of the reasons why people should read that book by Edward Said. I mean,
which one?
Well, Orientalism. I mean.
Oh, okay.
No, I mean, obviously the other stuff too, if you feel like it. But I think Orientalism is very much a key text to understanding how that, how to do cultural and literary history and looking at stuff like Orientalism, I guess. I mean, you can then apply the same sort of like concepts to the way we also, other people from different other parts of the planet in a lot of ways. So I think it's a valuable book to read.
Have you read anything, Raf, by, I'm probably going to mispronounce this and I apologize. Where is it? Yes. Naguib Mahfouz?
No, I don't think so.
He has a quartet of Egyptian fantasy slash like literary fiction.
Okay.
And the first one's called Palace Walk.
No, never heard of it.
And it's the only one of the quartet that's on audio.
Yeah, I totally understood what you meant there, Ori, with the fatwa being overrated. But it's also just a wonderful sentence without any context going like, I think a fatwa is completely overrated.
No, I
read that, I was like, wait. I was so confused.
No, I mean, I know what you mean. It's a funny word, No, it's I thought this comment from Oso was pretty funny. You say Pope and they wear robes. It's Italian.
I can at least back that one up because I actually am Italian, so I can back that up a little bit. No, don't do that. No, no.
Yeah, and yes, Ori. I know there are other Indian authors that are not afraid of calling what they write fantasy or science fiction. I'm aware of that.
Yeah, there's the guy who wrote Sons of Darkness. Though I've been kind of hesitant to read his work because I'm like, man, because again, Indian has Hinduism, and there's a lot of crazy stuff you could pull from that, and it just seems kind of like just kind of modern fantasy, just with a Indian bent. I could be wrong.
Isn't it like some myth retelling? I haven't looked into it, but I think you're talking about what's his name, something Mohanty. And the second book is coming. Gaurav Mohanty, that's his name, right? And the second book of that series is coming out next month, I think.
It is, yeah. Funny, I was in the
book one.
And isn't that like a Mahabharata retelling in some way? I think it is.
I think so. Yeah.
I haven't looked into it because I don't know, something annoyed me at the time, so I didn't look into it. And of course, I mean, there's a lot more Indian authors, or at least authors with Indian sounding names, where I haven't checked where they actually live and whether they're diaspora or like living in parts of India. For example, the 10% Thief is still one of those books that I still want to read, right? And that's by an Indian author.
No, yeah, I mean that sounds right, but I'm like, that just kind of sounds like it was funny though. I walked in a bookstore the other day and I was kind of skipping through it, and who blurbed it but our old friend, Dr. Philip Chase. So I had to take a photo of it and be like, look at this, I just found this. So they finally got in paperback, so that's cool because I prefer paperback.
Yeah, I mean, there is more stuff getting out. I think, as I said, like the one that I'm looking forward to this year is what's it called, 10 Incarnations of Rebellion, by what's her name, Vaishnavi Patel. Is that her name? However you pronounce that, I'm really bad at this, but the one who wrote KK and something after that. KK. I haven't read it. I have no idea, but this one seems to be alternate history, post anti-colonial anger, which is totally my kind of thing.
That's you in a book.
It's about a group of women starting a new underground rebellion against the British occupiers of a city built on the ruins of Mumbai. Which sounds like something that will be really, really angry. And might be my thing.
Arnold says, I do not believe in magical realism. To me, that is just posh fantasy. I have complicated views on this subject. I sympathize where you're coming from. For me, magical realism sometimes can kind of be like what they describe like graphic novels, and they don't just call it comic books. It just seems kind of like a self-conscious term. But at the same time, like magical realism is like a thing, I mean, I haven't read a lot of it, but I know like it is a separate thing. It is fantastical, so I'm not saying like, it's not fantasy at all, but it is like.
I think what is important to understand is how like magical realism is. I would still put it into the larger sphere of the fantastic, so to speak, if you want to use like Svetlana Todorov's kind of definition of that. I would argue it's a tradition. It's important to understand the idea of a tradition, right? This is authors that are sometimes, a lot of them obviously being from South America, but not all of them, of course, of reacting to each other, being influenced by each other, interacting with each other, and building this more like a school. It's more like a school if you want to, say it's more like a traditional school like you have in martial arts. You have this specific style of karate or whatever, and you have this specific style, and those are schools. And I think magical realism is one of them. And in that regard, I would even accept that Salman Rushdie is certainly being influenced by the specific techniques and so forth of magical realism more than, say, the techniques of pulp, sword, and sorcery. Totally fine. Where I disagree with him in particular, and where I think that sort of like problem comes from, that you also just like pointed at, Britton, is that he makes this sort of like dichotomy between magical realism, which is, you know, smart and wizards, and then you have fantasy, which is stupid and wizards. And I'm like, yeah, but that's you being like fucking Bourdieu on everyone and pretending that you have like more cultural capital by, I don't know, being able to quote fucking Shakespeare or whatever and calling yourself magical realism. That's building, that's gatekeeping and bullshit. But that doesn't mean that like he's using techniques and elements from a specific school of fantasy or of the fantastic that is very much magical realism, and not, say, Tolkien style fantasy or Robert E. Howard style fantasy. Those two things I feel are different. The same with, you know, comic books and graphic novels. There's people who go like, I don't read comics, I only read graphic novels, and that's bullshit. But
They're
there's
in the
obviously
same family.
But there's obviously a difference between like in construction, pacing, and so forth. There's obviously a difference between, say, something like Watchmen and the Marvel Superman comics. And you can see that even with authors like, say, Alan Moore, right? When they go and write, you know, a series of comics, just like, you know, take over one of those basic Marvel characters for a while. And that's when they write comics, and then they go and then do something like, I don't know, From Hell or whatever, and then that's or V for Vendetta, and that's clearly a graphic novel, because they work differently in pacing, in how you build up the structure and so forth. But that's not saying one is better than the other. And it's important to use the terminology where it makes sense, and call out people using the terminology just for as a tool of distinction, because yeah, we don't like that around here. I mean, I don't.
I'm not a fan. You know, it's actually a subject I hope to cover in the Fate of Fantasy, which is about magical realism. But maybe someday we'll get to it.
The one thing that irritates me, and maybe you can bring this up in your Fate of Fantasy stuff, is that a lot of people write magical realism and don't say it's not fantasy.
Yeah.
And that really annoys me. I'm like, yes, it's literary fiction, but you have like aliens and shit. So like,
that's always been
it's
kind of a weird thing, you know.
It was interesting because it came up a lot recently. Like last week, I read this essay collection by Ursula Le Guin, and Le Guin is very much someone who constantly raged against that whole thing.
Oh yeah, she ripped into like Kashiro Ishiguro's book, The Buried Giant. It was hilarious. I read that little article.
I haven't read that specific one, but she's very much often talking about the idea that,
really,
you know,
funny,
that fantasy isn't literature and so forth. And she's like, no, that's bullshit. And that's you trying to keep us out. And obviously she wrote a bunch of reviews, book reviews for stuff by what's her name? God's me and names.
What did she
I'm
write?
completely blanking. The Handmaid's Tale, Margaret Atwood. That's the word I was looking for. So she, like poetry collections and stuff by Margaret Atwood. Atwood, obviously, as a sci-fi writer who was always very proudly saying that she was writing sci-fi, she also commented on the fact that Margaret Atwood does not want to be called sci-fi and labeled as sci-fi, even though The Handmaid's Tale clearly is science fiction. So you have that in what Le Guin is saying a lot. Sort of like fighting against these labels and wanting to accept that. And she brings it up. It's like, well, you read something like Cormac McCarthy, and clearly there's supernatural elements in his books, the same way that you have like Ghost and fucking Turning of the Screw by Henry James. Is that genre fiction or not? Or isn't that different? Isn't that like artificial sort of labeling beyond just, you know, where to put it in a bookstore? Isn't that just something you do because you want to, you know, elevate your own taste over someone else's taste? And we should just like abandon those kind of differentiations. It brings up, you know, people like Thomas Pynchon, of course, as well, McCarthy, Pynchon, so forth. Well, clearly they are very much not caring about realism in a book like Gravity's Rainbow. That's not a realist novel by any stretch of the imagination.
I would say like it's in the same kind of speculative fiction family. You know, it's kind of which is why I don't mind speculative fiction so much, because speculative fiction is kind of like an all-encompassing thing. Like you can call a horror book a speculative fiction book. You can call a fantasy book a speculative fiction, you know. Now, when people try to use that to distinguish it from science fiction, I have a problem with it. But aside from that, I'm fine with that term most of the time anyway.
Yeah, magic. Yeah. I mean, the thing is, like, I did read 100 Years of Solitude last year in summer. And yeah, that's a very different thing. That's clearly fantastic in all kinds of weird
That
ways.
book is weird as hell.
But it is clear. But it is clearly very different from like the kind of fantasy that most people who use the term fantasy would understand by that, right? It is very different from that, and so I understand why there is that differentiation. And the same way you have that with, I guess, some of Rushdie's texts, where they're like, yeah, this is clearly doing something beyond like very narrow hardcore realism in a lot of ways, but it's not the same thing as Lord of the Rings, just to use like the most basic standard, right? It doesn't have dwarves and elves, but it's still not realist fiction. And the same way that, you know, fucking Thomas Pynchon in Against the Day has people drilling a tunnel through the Alps fighting dragons under the mountain because that's where fucking dragons live. And if you dig a railway tunnel, you might still have to deal with that.
If that happens. You're making me want to read Against the Day now.
It's a really cool book. It does have weird shit. It also has the Hollow Earth. It has a talking dog. And so much more crazy shit.
Okay. I'll take a talking dog. I like dogs more than people anymore. So I'll take a talking animal.
Asia says, I read text by Atwood where she explains her stance on the sci-fi thing. She makes an argument that makes some sort of logical sense. That said, I disagree with her conclusion. You know, that's interesting.
Yeah.
That kind of just fills me with the idea that you can kind of convince anybody of anything. I mean, if it's like,
if
even
you
if
write
it
enough
seems kind of
words about
hypocritical.
I think like the way I read it in Le Guin, and I feel I kind of go with Le Guin on that one, was that yeah, there's an argument on why she goes there, but the main point is that Margaret Atwood was never an author or an artist whose art could be put into any box, right? She's writing realist fiction, she's writing poetry, she's writing clearly science fiction and so forth. So any form of labeling is something that she's kind of beyond. Like it's always about bending or breaking any box you try to put her in. So her sort of like reaction against being labeled science fiction, beyond just, you know, the mere that kind of prevents you from being taken seriously as a writer by the Academy and all kinds of other people, at least at the time when she started writing. Beyond all of that, she would probably also object being put into the box of realist fiction or any other box, really, which is sort of like the thing was like, no, I'm doing this. It's speculative fiction because I do write fiction and I speculate about shit, and you better deal with that. Is more like her reaction against every sort of label, external label that is put on her stuff, and not just against science fiction. It's just that science fiction people take it more personally, I guess, than others, because a lot of science fiction writers have lived with that sort of like dismissal from like the literary establishment in a lot of ways, and they kind of get, I guess, up to a point jealous when someone just goes, no, I'm not writing science fiction, it's speculative fiction, and then they get accepted by everyone, and you're still out there because your stuff is labeled science fiction, you're still not taken seriously. I think that's where a lot of that conflict kind of comes from. At the end of the day, I don't fucking care what Margaret Atwood calls her style. It's books I find interesting.
I like Orcs and Crake from her more than the
Handmaid's Tale.
Yeah. That's my spicy take of the day.
I think it's one of those things that I find interesting with Atwood now. Also, the same way the whole like African futurism versus Afrofuturism thing with Nnedi Okorafor, and I think what is important there is that these are people who try to define themselves, define what they are, and not letting anyone else sort of like define them in any way, which is why you make up your own sort of like your own terminology and forge your own sort of path forward. And that's I think something that I personally really respect in a lot of ways, even though I may not necessarily agree with their specific takes, but I believe, not just believe it, they have the right to do that. It's their art. They can label it whatever the fuck they want, and I'm fine with that. And I have no right to tell them not to do that. And that sort of like willingness to take agency to define yourself and your art, I think, is something very admirable. Something that I admire in Atwood, in Hideo Korafor, in Ursula Le Guin, of course, as well, right? Like, that willingness to just do your own thing and damn the rest is just like very powerful. I guess that's how I would phrase that.
Yeah, I've made videos about this in the past. I've even discussed it on my podcast a few times with a few people, like you and Philip Chase and a couple other people.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I made my video about why I think Death of the Author is crap. So, I mean, if you want to watch that and go nuts, it's a good time.
The fucking author was never dead. Death of the Author is such a misread kind of text. It's so frustrating because it's used in so many ways. First of all, you have like the basic bullshit thing where everyone goes like, "Oh, Death of the Author." So I can still read Harry Potter and just ignore what J.K. Rowling does. Like, no, that's separating the art from the artist is not the same thing as Death of the Author. That's not how that works. And reading Death of the Author, if you actually read the text, which I think is, something anyone should really do if they want to, talk about it. And it's not that long of a text. It's free online.
Steven Erikson write an essay called like "The Artist is the Living Dead" or something like that?
Yeah, he did, and it's a good one. It's an interesting one, but it kind of goes beyond that. And another one that I think is important to also read in that context is "What is an Artist" by Michel Foucault, which kind of follows up on some of the stuff that Barthes deals with. The main thing is that Roland Barthes was at the time reacting against specific forms of literary criticism that were basically focusing on authorial intent to the complete exclusion of anything else. And the problem with that is, of course, that you can always, my interpretation of a text is more valid than yours because I know more facts about the author than you do. So clearly I am right with my reading of the text, which then, of course, sets up an elite class of sort of interpreters of the divine author because they're the ones that have like, privileged access to the author because they are, they have studied in academia. They may have, even spoken to the author by virtue of being literary critics in a still at the time very clearly like very restrictive sort of like media ecosystem, right? And that's what he's reacting against. Like, if you pick up a book and you think this and this and this about the text, that's a valid reading of the text. Yes, authorial intent can come into that. That's not even excluded, but it's your reading is first and foremost your reading, and that's valid, unless you do something else. And then you go to people like Umberto Eco looking at ways of defining of trying to find ways to define some readings of a text as objectively wrong. But that's what Death of the Author meant at the time. It's mostly an argument against a very specific hierarchical form of literary criticism, and people kind of forget that. It's just the same way that people ignore like so much in Epic 2 when they go like, "Well, he just hates Tolkien." I was like, no, he's not hating Tolkien. He's doing something else there. And in the words of Frederick Jameson, you need to historicize that shit. You need to understand what they're arguing against at that point.
Well, he does complain about Tolkien in that article.
Yeah, of course. That's fine.
Oh, sure, that's fine. I mean, I don't agree with him, but that's fine. He can do it.
Yeah, of course. But
even though the literal article is basically just, why is this guy famous? Here's these other books that I like that should be more famous, which is like, okay, that's fine. You can believe that, but that's like such a subjective thing, you know?
But that's not what Epic Pooh says. Epic Pooh says the problem is that if everyone tries to copy Lord of the Rings, then we can just basically scrap all of fantasy because nothing new is coming out. Because the first book that everyone is copying is already not, necessarily the best book ever written. And y'all are not even half the kind of writer that Tolkien was. So maybe do something else.
Well, that too.
I mean, he does praise Terry Pratchett by saying he's the only Terry in Fantasyland able to write a full sentence.
No,
which
I'm trying to fucking find this here. Let me just find this.
See, picaresque weird sounds very Jack Vance to me. No, so.
I mean, you know what I've realized in the last couple of years, guys. I freaking love picaresque stories. Just
oh yeah.
Wow.
Have you read your Dying Earth yet?
Me?
Yes.
Oh, no. I've it's funny. My friend Livia the other day was like, "Hey, we're gonna read a Jack Vance book soon. You want to get involved in that?" And I'm like, man, like I'm not really planning on reading Jack Vance anytime soon, but maybe. I forget what book it is. Let me look at it because she texted me about it the other day. Inferio.
That one I haven't read yet. I have read The Dying Earth, and I've read the Leoness trilogy, and I've read Planet of Adventure, which we talked yesterday. We talked about Servants of the Wank yesterday.
Actually, we were talking about inherently funny words the other day, and I was on Threads.
Yeah.
And I just saw this like, I don't know what they call it, a thread, I guess, where the guy literally goes, "Question for my writers/authors. You ever raw dog a story, no outline, just have an idea and start writing?" And Stephen King responded, "All the time." And I'm just like, okay, raw dog a story are words I would never think go together.
I'm more shocked by the fact that Stephen King, at his age, is this conversant in slang.
He's just casually like, "Yeah, all the time, dude." I'm just like, that was so funny to me.
But yeah, that explains why so many fucking Stephen King stories are inconsistent and have all these problems, because he doesn't ever do anything
Mac,
else.
how you doing? Man.
I'm not a huge Stephen King fan. That might get me canceled, but I'm not.
He's not for everyone.
The only book of his that I actually genuinely enjoyed was 11/22/63.
Dude.
It's interesting that out of all the opinions I have on books, the one where I come up against the most, like, why can't you believe this, is that I say that 11/22/63 is a shit book.
I think I enjoyed it because I read it in college in a journalism class where we focused on the coverage of the JFK assassination in that class. That was the focus of the class.
Yeah, I think that's like one key point, is like this book hits differently if you're American, and it even hits more differently if you're over a certain age. And the closer you are to the Kennedy assassination in any way, shape, or form, if you were alive, or like consciously alive before 9/11, this book hits differently, I would argue, because then 9/11 kind of took over as the big national trauma in a way. But
that's why I get very upset when people make fun of things that happened in 9/11, because I lived an hour outside of New York City, so like 9/11 for me was not a joke.
No, but it's just like, I never thought raw dog a story would be words that
you would hear
go together, No.
There's an entire book called Raw Dog, which is about the history of the hot dog.
Oh my god, I would just be snickering the whole time. Look,
it's very clearly the point. Is like, if you write an entire book about hot dogs and you get the chance to call it Raw Dog and get that past your publisher, you do that.
You should get away with that, though.
Exactly.
You should get away with that with everything else. No.
Knowing what the author usually also does, I would not be surprised if she did in fact decide to call a book Raw Dog and try to find a topic with which she could add that.
I've heard Nosferatu is pretty good, Mac. I really like Robert Eggers' movies. I'll admit I was a little let down with The Northman. I liked it, but I was just kind of like, it's fine, you know.
I have not watched a movie in forever.
But I mean, Raph might find Nosferatu interesting because it's German, kind of German vampires.
I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff somewhat too very problematic with the older Nosferatu movies. So the question is like how much the new version sort of like differs from the one that it's arguably sort of like based upon.
No, it's like. Have you seen the one with Klaus Kinski, who is like a literal psychopath?
Yeah.
I've only ever seen the original because I had to in a film class when I was in college.
Oh yeah, no, it's
like
freaky.
the silent version, so to speak.
Oh, which with the what's his name, Boris something.
Yeah,
that one is
that one.
Slightly anti-Semitic in a lot of ways.
No,
a lot of stuff back then was anti-Semitic.
That'd be I'm sure this has been done, but like Nazi vampires would be a fun story. Very pulpy. I would.
Well, that goes into Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Well, are they vampires though? Like,
well, I don't know what the hell they are, but
the Nazis kind of get the wrath of God struck on them though. So I mean that happened.
I mean, to be fair,
which is totally fair, by the way, because they're persecuting his people. But it's not. I won't get too far into that.
I mean, you have Nazi werewolves, you have Nazi vampires, you have Nazi zombies, you have Nazi whatever else Wolfenstein has done by now. I don't necessarily know whether it's a clever thing to do more of the Nazi meets some sort of like supernatural monster kind of thing, because that's a way of basically, ignoring the banality of evil in a lot of ways. Going, no, look, they're werewolves.
I like those kind of pulpy stories. I get like that's not really how it was. It's just like I kind of like that. It's fun. Not that Nazis are like fun, or I don't know. I don't know what I'm talking about at this point.
We're on a slippery slope.
the Romani are relatively good guys, and Nosferatu's ass. So I mean, reference.
Relatively good guys. Nice. Yeah, but I just it's been a while since I watched the movie. I mean, although I did watch the second Dune movie, and I wasn't necessarily a big fan.
I don't get the love for it. I honestly don't get the love for Dune in general.
Raph, I know you like By Force Alone, which
it does have Nazi vampires. That is true.
It does? Wow. Okay.
That must have happened after I DNF'd it, because I don't remember that. I DNF'd that book. I don't remember that part.
I had the same issue with I had the same issue with the Dune movies that I had with the book. It's just it's so dry, and no pun intended, but like it's dry. Like
I can respect it for what it did for the genre without liking it.
Sure, yeah.
So the Nazi vampires are in the plotline around Lancelot being the Kung Fu monk, Kung Fu Grail Seeker. And he has to get through Germania on his way to the British Isles. And there he runs into, well, that's the Parzival basic. Parzival with like a lot of Wagnerian sort of like connections is the Nazi vampire thing there. It's pretty good. It's a pretty fun scene. Also, Joseph of Arimathea might be dying in that scene because of reasons.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard a lot about like By Force Alone. I mean, I know you really like it, Raph, but like I heard it's kind of like if Arthur was a gangster story, like if King Arthur was a gangster story. And
Among other things.
That's interesting. It's interesting.
It was just the writing style for me. It was just not clicking in my brain. I was like, I can't. I don't know why. I read like a third of it, and I was like, I don't know what the hell's happening.
Yeah.
I was so confused.
Where isn't Tidar from? Like he's like Jewish, he's like German, he's American, he's British, you know? It's ridiculous.
He lives in the UK. He was born in Israel, and obviously being born in Israel means that his parents came from different parts of Europe, and so yeah, Transylvania makes a lot of sense. No, I understand that By Force Alone is not for everyone. I think it's an interesting approach because of what it does around the way that Arthurian mythology is such a fundamental part of like British national identity. And if you believe that national identities are maybe a bit of a problem because they lead to, fascism, then taking an axe to those national myths and going like, here's what we can also do with that is, I think, a worthwhile undertaking in a lot of ways. Which is why you get a roadside picnic episode in By Force Alone as well.
No, Darnell's comment made me laugh. Just King Arthur gangster? Because what? Excalibur sleeps with the fishes, right?
Is one of your favorite movies all the gangster movies from back in the day?
Well, yes, I do enjoy The Godfather quite a bit.
Who doesn't? Like,
and
that
also,
was in my household.
By Force Alone, I won't get out of bed. No, but going back to this raw dogging a story.
No! No!
You know, it's just that's just a funny way of describing it. You know, it's like, oh man, I had to take a.
Well, I mean, to be fair, people,
I had to get proof because I'm going to share it on Twitter later.
Aren't people?
Hilarious.
Darko, hi.
People in
Hello,
author,
how are you doing?
people on AuthorTube. People on AuthorTube usually go like, "No, I'm a pantser. I think I'm a raw dogger sounds so much better." Because you can get rid of those fucking pants for that one.
Man, imagine Darko walking in on this and we're just talking about raw dogging a story and he's like,
I had nothing to do with this conversation. I'm just saying that.
What are they talking about?
I will message you later, Darko. I have an idea that I want to see if you want to take apart.
Oh man, I'm sorry. I laughed way too hard at that, but I'm going to share that later.
You'd be surprised, Thornell, but yes, it is very much like that in the beginning. Not the 5 Saxon families, but the part that is basically is it called Gangs of Londinium? I think it's called Gangs of Londinium or Streets of Londinium. That part of the book is young Arthur and his gang finding all these other people that then obviously all are famous Knights of the Round Table, and all of them run their own criminal gangs in London, and then he has to kind of unite all of them. So yeah, there is a part that is very much written like a gangster movie.
Oh my god. Just stop. What have I done?
We're gonna go down.
What have I done? Oh, I'm so sorry, everyone.
Well, I am also the oldest of 6 and one of the only girls, so I'm usually always outnumbered.
Also, I'm very happy that you made that connection, because I'm sure that is very much real.
Oh god, I don't know what I've done here.
Sorry, I'm kind of trying to keep track of my my football team might be going to the Super Bowl, depending on how today's game ends.
Are you going for Washington or
no? Fuck no.
Philadelphia?
Yeah, I'm a Philly girl.
Oh, okay.
I would never if I went for Washington, I would never be able to go home.
No.
All I know about Philadelphia football, I have learned from the Well, There's Your Problem podcast, which is obviously the most objective source on anything Philadelphia.
That's my hometown, so I will stick up for it, even though I'm the only person that can complain about it, because that's my hometown.
No, No, but it's just
Go Birds!
no. It's
I have no idea about football. In Germany, we call it Rasenschach, which means lawn chess.
that's
Thing,
fun.
though.
Yeah, no, no, but jeez, just I'm
Literally,
just,
my family would be like, "You're not allowed back in the house, like back in the house you grew up in, if I was for anybody but Philly."
I love how chill Darko is. He's like, I love the Cowboys, but I'm just gonna go for the Eagles. I'm like, you know what? Go for it. It still kind of throws me off that he's not a Ravens fan, but he's like, no,
It's
we
kind of
hate
funny,
the Ravens where I'm
we,
at.
we just found out recently talking to each other that we didn't grow up too far from each other.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, like I think we grew up like 2 hours away from each other. The world's small, man.
No, it's just like, but it's the abandoned Mithrium. I don't know what the hell that is.
It's a Mithraeum
used
is
for
the
rave
temple where you do the
parties
Mithras
in-
rites.
It says way better used in Cornwall's Warlord Chronicles though. Laugh.
Yeah, but that's because everything is better than Bernard Cornwell's fucking Warlord Chronicles.
I have the first book. I haven't read it yet.
It's not good.
My brain is short circuiting after the raw dog conversation we just had like 5 minutes ago.
Now, by force alone is a far superior Arthurian retelling compared to Bernard Cornwell's Warlord Chronicles.
I haven't found one that I'm in love with yet.
I'm sorry.
I think Mark Twain's is pretty good.
Yeah, I still need to read that. The
He has
Connecticut Yankee and King Arthur.
The Connecticut Yankee at King Arthur's court.
Okay. I'm not a big Mark Twain reader, but
it's a very interesting one. It also is very ragingly anti-capitalist in a lot of interesting ways.
Yeah, Mark Twain was freaking woke, man. Like he was like woke before like woke became a thing. Like,
I wouldn't call it woke, but it's very interesting that he has
would based be a better word?
Possibly. It's interesting because if you read a Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's court, he is very clearly has very very progressive for the time, even more progressive, like ideas about black people, but he's totally fucking racist against any native character.
I mean,
which is interesting because like he writes this in like 1890, and he's like, well, obviously black and white, no difference, but natives are definitely the savage. And I'm like, holy shit, motherfucker. Which is just interesting to see how sort of like these kind of opinions kind of change over time, how you can be very progressive in one specific thing and then completely miss the same point, like the general point of racism on the next one. I'm like, I don't know, man. But it also ends with Merlin electrocuting himself. So there's that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not really the biggest like King Arthur guy, but it's starting to grow on me. I read Spir earlier this month, which I thought was really good. It was like just the prose in it was just mwah, mwah. Yeah, so good. I thought it was really good. I know you like Spir, Raph.
What?
Oh, I was just like. Oh, Spir. I read Spir earlier this month.
Spir is really good. Well, yeah, definitely. I mean, there's stuff in Marx and Engels' writing that has not exactly, would not necessarily pass the vibe check in a
hello,
like graduate course for, say, gender studies today, to put it like mildly.
Here's how I think of it. It's the 1800s. If it's not like a little racist, then like good for them. But it's kind of par for the course.
Yeah, of course. Hey, Bend. Now, so Okay, Mists of Avalon, I have lots of issues with, but that is clearly because, years later. And that's not necessarily just because of, like, knowing what we now know about Marion Zimmer Bradley. It's just, like, the way she writes that is very white second wave feminism in a lot of ways.
No, he said appear is beautiful, but then he clarified Spir is beautiful. Yes, it is. It's really wonderful. I really enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah. I mean, that's interesting. I think, like, even like T.H. White's Once and Future King is a pretty solid, in a lot of ways, pretty solid Arthurian retelling. There's, the stuff about the Nazis is somewhat problematic.
Why
but
is there
that's
Nazis in? Why are there Nazis in King Arthur story? Hold on a minute.
Because T.H. White wrote it while being in Ireland because he was a conscious objector to England fighting the Nazis, because he was a hardcore pacifist. So he lived in Ireland in the 40s, and that's when he wrote that book. And some of that stuff makes it into the text in some ways.
Excuse me. Oh, okay, that makes sense. I'm like, why the hell is he does it like shift into the modern day? Like, I just thought it was like a modern day retelling of like Arthur.
No, it's not. But so one of the things in the whole, like, Once and Future King, and I just assume that you've seen the Sword in the Stone, the Disney movie, which is the adaptation of the first part, right? One of the things is that Merlin in that version is traveling backwards through time. So Merlin can make all these comments about the British Empire and Nazis and stuff, because that's stuff that has already happened for him, because he's moving in the other direction.
All right. Yeah, that's interesting. It's I mean, the Arthurian stuff I've read, I read Spir. That was earlier this year. I've read Once and Future, which is a comic by Kieran Gillen, which is very good.
Okay.
Which is actually like the best Kieran Gillen book that I've read so far, because I find with him, I find he's really good at like concepts, but like his pacing and stuff, like get him a good editor. He's kind of like Grant Morrison in this way. Like, get him a good editor and he'll cook. But like, if you just let him run wild, then like it just kind of, it just goes off on another direction where you're just like, there's pacing problems and whatnot. In my opinion, anyway. You could totally say, Britton, you're wrong. But Once in Future, though, like, man, I've only read the first volume. So again, take this with a grain of salt. But I had a lot of fun with it. I thought it was really, it's basically like, it's just like a postmodern, like, just snappy, really fun. It's really just a great time.
Yeah, I think my main issue with Bernard Cornwell's Warlord Chronicles is something that I also found in Stonehenge, which is the only other one of his that I've read. He's a misogynist, and he's very much also like, all women are evil except for the one woman that is always really nice to our main character. That's like one thing that always happens in these books. And women are evil because they want to have power and want to have control. And that's not necessarily something I personally approve of as like a storytelling technique. Then you, of course, have the thing that intelligent men are always effeminate and possibly also duplicitous and treacherous and bad guys. And the only good guys are the honest, stupid hunks, basically.
The manly men.
The very manly men, yes. And I don't need that kind of storytelling. That's lame and just like hateful in a lot of ways. And I fucking hate that. And people going like, oh, but it's so good. It's like, no, he used shield walls when no motherfucker would use shield walls. But you're stupid and think that, like, if he describes a shield wall like graphically, that must be accurate historical depictions. Like, no, it's not. Read a fucking book, motherfucker.
Read another book, you mean?
Yeah, but it's so fucking frustrating because if everyone on BookTube loves the Warlord Chronicles, people who are teachers of history in high schools read those books and go like, well, they're really good. It's like, no, they're fucking, you should know better. You love the Roman Empire. You should understand that this is fucking wrong, Alan.
Oh, right. Well, Ref doesn't like the Warlord Chronicles, but also asked an interesting question. Would you agree? I think he meant to say, would you agree? Would agree with The Witcher, Arthur, that fantasy goes back to King Arthur? I would say that's one of its sources for sure. Like King Arthur, the Odyssey, and the Iliad.
I would
myth, I would say, is a big one.
I would argue that it goes further back than Arthur. I do, however, see what he means. I think there's a difference. There's a difference between.
Oh, Jimmy, you should have been here for our raw dogging conversation. You would have loved it. It would have just been like, man, this is great. This is peak YouTube right here. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Raph. What were you saying?
I think there's a difference between mythology and fantasy, and Arthurian legend, as written by Geoffrey of Monmouth, is clearly something made up by one specific person, and not some form of like oral tradition or whatever that is sort of built up. In that regard, I can see why you might call it fantasy. I would argue that something like the Satyricon is probably more of a good candidate for like an early fantasy novel. It's obviously a parody of a lot of stuff, but it has like an actual werewolf story in it and all kinds of stuff. And it's clearly written as an entertainment story. It's not meant to be like mythology. It's not meant to be anything else. It's just a story about two dudes having a gay relationship and just making their way drunkenly through Asia Minor and getting into all kinds of problems. And it's written around the time of Nero, I think, that maybe slightly later. I would have to look it up.
Well, I didn't know there was gay relationships in King Arthur. Unless you're talking about something else, then I'm just
no. I was talking about the Satyricon as a better choice for like an early fantasy.
Okay.
No. You could probably find gay relations in the Arthurian context if you want to. I think the problem with Arthur is as soon as you try to do something more than go like, well, this is something that Britons made up, the British people made up to feel good about their country. If that's what you do, that's fine. If you claim historical accuracy, you need to be aware of what you're doing. And that's when the story is no longer just entertaining, because then it's a story where every smart person is evil and possibly slightly gay. And women are evil because they want to have power. And that's not a good story, period. No matter the fight scenes.
I mean, I won't argue. I haven't read any of these books. But I do...
It's just very mean-spirited.
Asia says... I don't know how to pronounce this, but Fionnavar Tapestry has some Arthurian stuff. It's not as popular as GGK's later stuff, but I fell in love with it at 13, so nostalgia makes me love it. But the later stuff is better. I don't know. I haven't read GGK yet. It's one of my blind spots as a fantasy reader, unfortunately.
I think the Fionnavar stuff is actually really good. The way, and that's the way that Kay does actually deal with the Arthurian stuff, I think is really good, because it does give sort of like resolutions to some of those like fundamental problems that you have in in the Arthurian sort of larger sort of what you might call larger canon, right? In that you have this situation that there is Guinevere and there's Arthur and there's Lancelot. And it's like, how do those three end up at the end? And it goes, well, why not just have like polyamorous relationship and that's that, and that's how the story then finds a resolution that I think is just it's really good. The way he deals with the Arthurian stuff, I think, is among the better parts of the Fionnavar Tapestry.
Yeah, I'm either thinking of starting him with like the Lions of Alathan, or is it Al-Rasan, or I think it's Al-Rasan actually. Either that or Tigana, because I've heard that's like some of his best stuff. From most of the people I know and trust who like his stuff anyway. I'm sure there's going to be those like actually people in the comments.
No, I think like Lions of Al-Rasan is probably one of the most popular Guy Gavin Kay novels. I just like to read stuff in publication order, so that's why I started with Fionnavar. And I'm like, yeah,
fair enough.
Start at the beginning, and it's good. I enjoyed it. I know it's.
I was about to say Spir actually does like LGBT related stuff very well. And even talks about disability a little bit. Like there's a guy with a limp, and it's really well done. Or actually, no, it's I think it's Lancelot who actually has the limp, if I remember right.
Which one?
Spir by Nicola Griffith.
That is true. That is true, Ori. Spir does have the poly sort of solution for the for that specific love triangle as well. But Spir is like written 25 years after Fionavar, so in that case, Guy Gavriel K does,
Mac is very excited about GGK talk.
Certainly did it first.
No, I mean, man, so many love triangles would be settled if polyamory was in the question, though I don't really think polyamory works.
I mean, the interesting thing is that, like, if you go further back in time,
most people were just polyamorous back in the day, which, like, hey, great, just it's awesome. Do your thing.
There's one of those. There's several stories in the Decameron by Boccaccio that have this kind of resolution where you have these two couples and the one guy sleeps with the wife of the other guy. So the other guy finds out and in revenge sleeps with his friend's wife. And then they all find out what has happened and they go like, well, I guess we'll just keep doing that because it is good. And that's the story. It's like, okay, why not? And yeah, sure, why not? Surprisingly normal about these kind of things, I feel.
Asia says GGK is one of my favorite writers. Lions of Albersan is my favorite, though I love all of them. Tagana is great, but probably my least favorite. All right, well, what's interesting about him is like he usually does like standalones that like take place in like these kind of vaguely historical settings. Like they're technically like alternate worlds, I guess, but they're very modeled by like specific periods in history. So I would love to get to them at some point. I just haven't really gotten around to it yet because like I'm reading Malazan and Discworld and Gormenghast this year. All right, like I'm chilling, bro. Song for Arbonne is the other one I was thinking of. I didn't.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's the next one I will have to read or continue reading, and that'll happen at some point. That's the one that's slightly influenced by like the Albigensian Crusade and that specific part of like French history. And I'm wondering if the new one that's coming out this year, the Written Upon the Dark, something like that, I think that might be based on or like might be in the same world because it also is very much inspired by like medieval France in a lot of ways. But I don't know. It's back covers so far, so who knows?
Well, I have no idea. Also, Raph, do you know if GGK wrote a book about pagan stuff in not Italy? All excellent choices, Britton, is what also says. I'm not sure yet, man. It's just kind of that's where we're at.
Yes, he did. That's the thing. Like, that's it. That's part of Tigana. Part of Tigana is the thing where he takes the Benandanti stuff and very clearly was inspired by reading Carlo Ginzburg's The Night Battles and takes the Night Wanderers.
Isn't GGK also kind of like a Tolkien scholar as well? Like, didn't he help Christopher Tolkien with some of the Tolkien stuff?
He is the co-editor of the Silmarillion together with Christopher Tolkien.
Interesting. Okay.
And that's what he did before he published his first novel. And when you read the Fionnuala Tapestry, you can see the very clear Tolkien influences on that one in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious to read his damn it, it's the one that's based on Sailing to Byzantium by W.B. Yeats. Joanna just recently read it, or Joanna just recently read it. It's called like
it's a Sarantine mosaic that's like 2 volumes, and one of them is Lord of All Emperors, and the other one is Sailing to Sarantium. You know what I'm talking
about? Mac probably knows what I'm talking about.
It's Sailing to Sarantium, and the other one is called Lord of All Emperors.
Sailing to Sarantium, that's it.
And the two together are called the Sarantine mosaic.
Yes. I'll have to check those out at some point. I don't know when that's going to happen. Alicia, you haven't talked in a while. Have you read any GGK?
Under Heaven is the only one
Oh, that's the one that Oso or somebody said is a good start. Oh, Asia said that, so yeah.
That's the
Okay.
only one, and that was forever ago that I honestly don't even remember anything. It was before like I booked Cube and all that stuff. So
I own all of his
forever
stuff
ago.
except for Children of Earth and Sky, because that one is region locked in Europe, and I didn't have access to it.
He's putting out a
until
new
recently.
one soon, isn't he?
Yes, Written Upon the Dark comes out in May, I think.
He has a lot of banger titles. I'll give him that. I haven't read them yet, but like, man, those titles
Yeah.
just slap, dude. No, yeah, I don't know where to start, but you know, you know what? I hope so too, because like so many people love him. I'm friends with and respect, like Josh from Red Fury Books. That's like one of his favorite authors of all time. So I'm like, I want to like things. There's some people who like think I'm like a contrarian. Like I try not to be. It's just, you know.
No,
start
you
with
just
Ryan
like what
and-
you like. There's so many books in the world that not everybody's gonna like every single book.
That's true. Yeah, I mean, you know,
I don't. People don't like me for my hot takes either, so that's okay. That's fine. I get mansplained how I don't like certain classics because I read it wrong because I'm a female.
gotta love those mansplaining. You know.
Oh, it's especially when it's mansplaining about Jane Austen. Sir,
people who, that's an odd sentence to say.
yes. Mansplaining that I read Jane Austen wrong. Mind you, I've been reading her since I was 10.
Just
So
you
leave me
wait
alone.
until I finally read those books, Alicia.
It makes me so angry. Like, and I'm mean, so I just put a comment. I'm like, I comment underneath it, and I'm like, thanks for watching all the way through. I appreciate it. Have a great day. Like, I don't care. Like, it's a view's a view, even if you don't like what I have to say. I don't care.
That's just funny to me.
It's hilarious.
Are you talking about the one that came out last, or are you talking about the one that is coming up next, Thorn All That? The next one is called Written on the Dark, comes out on the 27th of May, and is about totally not medieval France. That's all I can tell you about that one.
The only 2025 books I'm considering reading this year, Discovery by the Mentons, because, well, I know them, and that book actually sounds pretty awesome, and The Devils by Joe Abercrombie, because I'm like, you know what? I want to see a non-First Law book from him and see how that goes. Hopefully well. I'm also hoping to read... I'm also hoping to read The Great Win, though that came out last year. That didn't... Well, I'm not gonna say that. So, jeez, Oso's just banging them out, man. the Camelot comment and just, oh my god, and now this. I'm just like, dude.
I think so. My issue where I sometimes get angry at other booktubers is that if you have a channel of a certain size, you have a certain level of responsibility, and if you build your sort of like brand on being an expert on, say, history, and you then ignore all of these things in a book when you like that, that's when you kind of where those responsibilities are suddenly questions. That's something that I find that I personally find troubling, because if I try to get shit right, and when I see people go like, well, I'm the history dude, but I'm also totally fine with this being ahistorical and also having all these other problems. But trust me, it's really good because it's super historical. Then we have a problem, because that's where you undermine your own authority. And that's something I find just like...
You find it troubling?
I find it emotionally troubling, because that's just wrong. That's just giving up any form of integrity. And I want to think better of people. You know what I mean?
Sure, I hear you. I hear you. No, but The Devils is kind of my friend Jason's actually reading it because he got an arc of it, which fucking everyone gets an arc nowadays. It's ridiculous. Like, can I just rant about that real quick? And like, look, if you get arcs, that's great, but like, fucking everybody's getting arcs right now. Like, it's ridiculous. Like, who doesn't have an arc right now?
Have you ever tried to get one?
now Jason's here. I've summoned him. No, I've not tried to. Maybe
Well,
one
you
day
need
I'll
to
get an arc,
try
but
to
I'm
get one. If
maybe
you
I should try to
want
get one.
get
I
one.
should.
I've never asked for an arc, so I don't know. But that's the point. Is like you can't complain about everyone getting an arc if you haven't tried getting one yourself, right? You might get one as well.
You know what? Fine. That's a fair point. But okay. Maybe I'm not complaining. It's more just me being surprised that a bunch of people are getting arcs, and it's like, how?
Well,
Because
for me, because I interview a lot of authors, I get reached out to by their PR.
Jason said I got it from NetGalley. I'm like, okay.
Yeah,
right.
NetGalley is easy, and there's
That's the point.
literally
It's like,
section of NetGalley that can go read it now. You don't even have to ask.
Here, I'll look it up on my phone because I'm not gonna.
The thing is, Ori, I don't want to have arcs because if I only talk about books that I have bought myself, I don't owe anyone anything, and much less like an actual review. But if you go into the whole NetGalley thing, and yes, it's like, yeah, I got this early in exchange for a honest review, and I don't like that pressure. I've done music reviews for ages, and there you have that kind of responsibility. You get your promo download, you read it, you listen to the thing in advance, and while you are always fairly free in what you say about something, right? There's no like very explicit like pressure like almost never, unless like one specific author, or in this case band or artist, is like a dickhead, right? But I don't like to have that, so I don't ask for arcs, because why would I, right? It's like I can wait until the day it comes out and then talk about it. I'm not doing the spoiler free review things anyway, so if I read it a week later, it doesn't matter, because that's not how I interact with books. So I just don't see the point in asking for arcs. I mean, there's even like advanced like arc. There's audiobook arcs for some books already and stuff like that. It's like, but why would I, right? Like,
yeah, Jason was all like, "Oh, there's a bunny person in here in this book. That's so weird." I'm like, dude, if that irritates you, forget reading China Mieville, because he has fucking bug people all over his damn books. Like, so he's probably gonna go like, "Well, actually, I was just saying, you know," and I'm like, yeah, whatever. But no. Maybe I'll try NetGalley, but like, I don't know. I'm kind of wary of arcs because I'm like, I don't want to feel beholden to somebody, which that's probably not how it works. But you know, I'm just kind of like, I just want to read books at my pace, you know. And hey, if you want to get arcs, that's good. And maybe I'll try the arc game one day.
I only get ones that I know that I'm going to read the book, because I feel like sometimes people
no,
like.
I probably should have gotten an arc for The Great Win because I'm a big Alan Moore fan. But you know,
yeah, it's worth a shot. It can't hurt.
It didn't happen, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's true, Ori. I was offered that arc and I didn't accept it because and they did even offer like physical copies, which is even weirder. And it's like, why do you want to send me a physical copy of a romantasy book that you're comparing to Akatar and Fourth Wing? It kind of baffled me at the time.
Yeah, it's you know, with Abercrombie, I've noticed I've only read 4 of his books, so please take this with a grain of salt a little bit. But there are moments I do think he kind of spins his wheels, if you will. Like I remember reading the first trilogy and thinking, that's really good. And I read Best Served Cold, which I thought was good, but it just kind of felt like he was, you know, he was kind of repeating himself. Yeah, I was like, all right, like it's fine, like it's still like good, but you know, it's just kind of feels like he's, you know, kind of spinning his wheels a bit, if you will. Which, like, you know, that's fine. You have a style, but I like authors who can, you know, how do I put it? I like authors who challenge themselves, you know. I'm fine with, you know, I like that. Or at least if you're going to stick with the subject, find new ways to explore that subject rather than, you know, just saying the same thing you said better in a previous book, you know. But hey, maybe the Devils is a little different. I don't know.
I feel like, I think the main thing is that Joe Abercrombie has a very distinct style that is just like how he writes stuff, and that that's where he is very comfortable, and that is, they have the very snarky, deadpan kind of humor, have the very sort of like graphic descriptions, have a lot of like very slapsticky kind of action scenes where people just constantly fall on their face because that's just like something that he likes to write about. And that's just like his very specific, distinct voice. And because it is such a distinct voice, whatever he does will read like Joe Abercrombie in that regard. And it's easy to go like, oh, he's just doing the same thing again, when that's just like, that's something that would not necessarily be as apparent with an author that does not have such a very, very specifically distinct voice like Abercrombie does, right? Like you that's you recognize an Abercrombie text after like 2 sentences. And that's makes it very difficult to sort of like break out of that, except if you would try something completely different. Whereas a lot of other authors just like write in a less unique style, and it doesn't feel as, oh, he's doing the same thing again, because like everyone else is writing in that same voice as well. I think that's sort of like where Abercrombie gets kind of trapped by his very clear voice, I think.
I should note, I forgot to do this earlier, but again, if anyone's interested in popping in, because this is kind of like Matt's Pub where you can just pop in if you want. I did share the link on Discord, so if anyone wants to join in, feel free. But yeah, I see what you mean though. But I guess with like my thing is like, if you're gonna have like a voice and a unique voice, and that's fine. Just like find different ways to explore it. Sometimes I feel like, I want to say he gets lazy, but sometimes he kind of, kind of sits on his laurels a little bit, if you will. It's kind of like, yeah, all right, here's my style. I'm just going to do a thing.
Yeah, I've never read the half a king, half a whatever, half a war, and half a whatever the third one was trilogy. Maybe I should. I don't know.
Well, Oso, I have a book for you, unless you've already read it, which is kind of gritty, but also weird as shit. It's called the Baz Lag trilogy, which is really dark and disturbing, but also so freaking out there with its imagination that you're kind of intrigued, even though you're horrified by the setting. I haven't read A Land Fit for Heroes, though, but Raph tells me it's very good. So
it's very angry and very fast-paced. It's like if you want like Joe Abercrombie, but without the ironic distance.
Fair enough.
Which is a thing. Well, there's a really wonderful Joe Abercrombie did like a review the first one, the Steel Remains, and it's an incredibly funny Joe Abercrombie writing about the Steel Remains, and going, "This is the darkest shit I've ever read," which is saying something. It's like Richard K. Morgan does not only take an axe to the to fantasy, he sets it on fire and then pisses on it, which is high praise from Joe Abercrombie, I would say.
No, that's funny. I'll have to find that review at some point, because I've read a couple of his blogs, because he sent me that The Value of Grit yesterday, which I read. I thought was really interesting, and I found some of the articles that he was that he linked, and I read a couple of those, and I thought they were pretty interesting too, even though I thought some of them really missed the mark on some series that I really like The First Law and Game of Thrones, because they kind of go under that whole, oh, there's no morality, everyone's just amoral and they get away with it, and you're like, no, it's not. Like, shut the fuck up. You don't understand fucking Game of Thrones or The First Law if that's the gist. If that's like the most surface level interpretation of it that I, but aside from that, interesting articles nonetheless. It's like, no, if you read The First Law, Joe Abercrombie's pretty pissed off about like class, pretty pissed off at the world's corruption and like class differences and stuff like that. Yeah. He's just able to like you said earlier, Raph, he has that ironic distance. So it's not just him just raging on the page.
Yeah. And that's kind of, I think that's like the difference. Like The Steel Remains has a lot of the same concerns, but Richard K. Morgan just like no ironic distance. He's just like full on revenge and violence. which is incredibly refreshing, but also incredibly bleak, especially in book 2 when you realize that going, full out on revenge leads you to some really dark places, like really, really dark places.
Wow, really, Raph? That's interesting. I didn't know
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, it's like, okay, there's this group, and they're just like, they're attacking this slave caravan and freeing all the slaves. And that's good, right? And then they're gang raping the slave, the slaver.
Oh, well, that's
like, well, so,
oh,
yep. And that's
oh boy, yeah.
And that makes it an interesting book, because it does not sort of like differentiate. It makes it very clear that it's very easy to go from step 1 to step 2 in that situation, and something breaks in between those two things, and it's easy to step over that line. And I think that's something you could not do with the sort of like ironic distance that someone like Abercrombie brings to the table.
Like, I know Robin, this is a bit of a non sequitur, but kind of going back to, we were talking about Gaurav Mohanty earlier, and I watched Robin's review, and that also made me really wary of it, because he basically just, I don't know if Robin's still lurking here, but like I've heard he like Mohanty just kind of rips off Joe Abercrombie and George R. Martin, and is bad at doing his own thing with it.
I wouldn't know that since I haven't read it. But I think it's also...
That's fair. I mean, Mieville is a very acquired taste from what I've learned and from what I've read of his, because like Perdido Street Station is one of the most freaking out there fantasy novels I've ever read in my life. I mean, there's people who like the Scar more, and I get it. It's one of those, like, I get it, because it's much more of a fantasy adventure. Though in the case of the Scar, A.P. Canavan put it pretty well. It's kind of the anti-fantasy Odyssey, if you will.
Yeah, but it is still it still uses a lot of like tropes and elements from like an adventure story, and thus feels more upbeat than Perdido Street Station, where everyone is just like caught in this fucked up city.
Yeah, and also Armada just seems like a better place to hang out at than New Crobazon, to be fair.
Yeah.
Even though there's the list of problems with also that, yeah, exactly. It's like, how are you going to promote that? It's like, yeah, there's this human scientist and a sculptor with a bug head who are banging, It's like, yeah, like, how are you going to recommend that to somebody?
Yeah, The City and the City is a really good book. I really appreciated that one. I also like Embassy Town, and I had a lot of fun with Kraken is so good because it's so over the top.
I read through Kraken in like 2020, but like I just stopped because I was like, I'm like, I'll read this at a later point. It was one of my and also I was really depressed in 2020 and just in a massive reading slump. So that, that didn't really help. I know Oso really likes Unlondon, which I actually have over here. I have a couple of Mieville books over there.
There's one scene in one bit in Kraken that I found so interesting, where you have these other like wizards that are doing like some divination by reading from the entrails of the city, which is like when they basically rip out guts of the city and read the future through that. And that's just like one of those like really clever sort of like urban fantasy approaches, when like, yeah, sure, cities do have entrails, right? Very clear. We have a lot of like plumbing down there that you could interpret that way, and then you can use it in that magical way. And that's just like a really clever thing that he does in a way that some other urban fantasy authors don't necessarily do, because they don't use the city as that sort of form of a character that in the way that Mieville does with London in this one. And let's say up to the point Megan Lindholm does with Seattle in Wizard of the Pigeons. And there's a bunch of other urban fantasy that does that, but a lot of it doesn't. It's more like, well, here's this city that I already know, but there's also werewolves somewhere. I'm like, yeah, that's nice.
I got Mieville. I have a couple of his books. I have even his October, which is kind of his written history, is kind of his narrative history of the October Revolution. Yeah. I do want to read it, but I am kind of wary because I'm kind of nervous that he'll just start beating it raw over these, mass murderers, and I'm like, I'm kind of uncomfortable with that a little bit. Little bit. I know, like, I've seen a couple of his conversations where he's talked about that a little bit, and he has some interesting thoughts on it, but I'm like, I don't know. I really don't want to see Vladimir Lenin or Leon Trotsky in like a positive light,
But why?
They're murderers. like they were.
So is Winston fucking Churchill.
Well, I'm not like. Hey, hold on. Not saying everyone. You stop it, but no, it's like, I don't know, man, but I would like to read it though to see what he has to do, because it's also like not fantastical at all. Like, it's just, someday I'll read them. I'll read them.
I think it's I understand where you're coming from, but I think it's sort of important to understand that while no, they are not necessarily the good guys. I mean, they're not the good guys. But, there's historical reasons why there's a revolution in Russia.
Well,
it's very difficult to find anyone who's a good guy in that situation.
I was about to say, I'm not saying like they just revolted for no reason. I'm just saying, like, I don't know if I want to see like Leon Trotsky or like Vladimir Lenin be galvanized, which I don't think I think Mieville's a smarter writer than that, but you never know. Like, he's one of the fellow travelers, so I'm not sure.
I haven't read it either, so I wouldn't know. I doubt he would go like Lenin is a good guy. It's more like looking at that's the Marxist approach. It's like historicize this and look at the materialist situation that led to people doing these kind of things and what then happens.
Yes.
It's not about he's a good guy. It's more like he's the kind of person who ends up in that. And I personally already disagree with like Lenin on the whole idea of a vanguard, but that's me personally.
Adrian Tchaikovsky, apparently. I do want to read his kind of, what's that series he's doing? That City of Lost Thieves or something, which kind
City of Lost Chances?
Yeah, City of Lost Chances, thank you. Which kind of reminds me of Bazlag a bit. I would like to try that at some point.
I have book 1, so if you want a buddy read it, let me know.
All right. Yeah, I know that like Churchill's not like, the goatest guy out there. It's the dude was like an imperialist. So, I mean, you're not going to find like morally upright people who are imperialists, like that's just kind of how it is, I guess. Now, I'm sure I'm probably going to get a bunch of angry comments for saying that, but that's just kind of how I view it, Like on
murderers in my country's history, Ori. Well, I just got told by a South African that we need to be more proud of like German traditions. So I don't know what to say at this point.
I mean, he stood up to the Nazis, which, like, hey, that's pretty based, Churchill. But yeah, Churchill did some pretty not nice things too, because, well, he was an imperialist, and, well, imperialists aren't always nice people. They're not nice to the people they're trying to imperialize, if you will.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, I guess in another word, I guess you could say that that Churchill raw dogged Bengali, if you will.
Okay, that is I would argue beyond the pale, because that's not an...
I'm sorry, I couldn't resist. That's probably a bad joke. I apologize.
Yeah, that is definitely a bad one.
That was probably in bad taste. I apologize to anyone who watches this and is like, this dude's an asshole. He's making jokes about Churchill starving out India. Yeah,
that's
it's not a good thing. That's not a good thing.
We try to stay away from genocide jokes most of the time.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. It's like you know what? Let's make some like more tasteful raw dogging jokes. I don't know.
Well, I mean, looking at the time, I would probably just drop out because it's like almost midnight here and stuff, right?
Yeah, I'm probably gonna hang out here for a little while longer. But if you need to drop out, Raph, that's go ahead, man.
Yeah, I'm out of beer and it's almost midnight. I should probably just get some sleep for once.
Yeah, you should do that. That's always a good idea.
I've heard about that. Not
Sleep is
necessarily.
important. Sleep is
Yes.
very important.
No,
So
sleep
they keep.
is
So they
very
keep
important.
telling me.
No, but yeah, man, if you need to drop out, feel free. I'm not gonna shame you. I'm not gonna be like, man, Raph, I put in all this time and effort, bro. Like, it's only been 2 hours. I'm not gonna do that. I won't do that. yeah.
My lights just turned on by themselves. I didn't even touch anything. That's weird.
Right. You have
All
a
right,
ghost
guys.
in-
I'll leave you to it. I'll just drop out and get some sleep, and
Have a
I
good
don't know.
night.
See you guys
All right,
around, and yeah, have a good evening.
sleep well, Raph. Well, yeah. Hello, Alicia. How you doing, man? Or how you doing?
Good. I'm good.
Oh, are you
Reading
reading the new Fonda Lee book that she wrote
Yes.
with Bruce Lee's daughter?
Yes. I'm so excited. I'm only 3 chapters in, but I can tell this is going to be a 5-star already. But I also think it's because I grew up around a lot of the teachings of Bruce Lee myself. So.
I was thinking of reading the trilogy she did, the Jade City trilogy this year,
Yep.
but I didn't. Unfortunately, I was like, I'm doing Malazan and Discworld and Gormenghast this year, so I'll have to put it off.
Yeah.
But that is one that is very high on my list that I would.
And
like
this is there's going to be a sequel, but it's a duology. There's only going to be 2 books, and it's 350 pages, so it's not long.
Yeah,
but
no,
I'm so excited.
Yeah, it's just it's a thing, man.
My dad used to fight professionally, and they used a lot of Bruce Lee's teachings, so I was raised around a lot of it. So a lot of this stuff I already know, which is kind of fun.
Tharnell asks, "What is it about?"
Breath of the Dragon.
No. I think he means the book, the Fonda Lee, Shannon Lee book. Yeah.
It is about I'm gonna read the little blurb right here. It'll be easier than me trying to explain. A young warrior dreams of providing proving his worth in his elite tournament, fighting for not only himself but the fate of his family. He's one of 2. This isn't a sequel, or this isn't like anything being given away or anything, spoilers. He's a twin. So because of how the area that he lives in is, they separate them because the one twin has a special ability and the other twin does not. So he's trying to prove himself that he does have a special ability, and that he's trying to bring back together his family, because his father was teaching techniques that were and are illegal in this time period. So to stop that from happening, they separated his family. So the mom went with the one sibling, and the dad went with the other, and they are in 2 separate areas of the country. That's where I'm at right now.
Yeah, I agree. So I really like that, but which is kind of funny. It does kind of remind me a little bit of Mieville and how he kind of makes the city a character, which is funny because Red Season, Red Skies is about a ship, and the Scar is also about a ship's nation. But anyway, I'll try not to get spoilery, but most of the thing I really like is just how well Scott Lynch writes revenge. Like, you're just like, John Wick, man, just straight up, like, it's up there with like Marv taking out the yellow bastard in City, and like John Wick shooting Theon in the face levels of just catharsis.
I do like the John Wick films.
Just ow, just yes, it feels right. You're getting just owned right now. It's great. It's great. Tharnell says, "Oh, so it's basically about me in high school." Gotcha. Well, that's. Oh man, I don't know. When I was in high school, it was just me just sitting around doing nothing. Did you ever watch Superbad, Alicia?
Way back in the day, but yeah.
I was about to say that was literally my high school experience. Well, without the like,
that came out when I was in high school. I think I was a junior.
Going to parties. I didn't go to parties because I wasn't a cool kid. But And I wasn't gutsy enough to try to get beer with fake ID. But aside from all that, probably the most accurate high school film I've ever seen was probably Superbad.
Yeah, my mom was a high school teacher, so yeah.
You're probably like, Alicia, what are you doing? And you'd be like, nothing.
I was the good kid, so they were fine.
No, that's good. That's good. I was also like
I-
the kid
I was,
who.
and that's what was so funny is like when my younger siblings got older, my dad was like, I don't know how to do this. I'm like, yeah, because you didn't let me do anything, so I didn't do it.
You should try Romania, Britton. Believe me, high school was hell. That's wonderful. Not really,
sure.
but like that's just.
Is
Never
that where
been to
you're
high
from?
school in Romania, but I don't know what it's like over there.
Is that where you're from? No, if you don't want to say, you don't have to.
No, it's just kind of.
And I'm also doing a reread of Jane Austen's Emma.
Oh well, that's good. It's
I'll be having a discussion with Evie.
Colton is here. Hello, Colton. Yes, Superbad is
Hello.
a classic. It's a great movie. It's so funny. I'm not usually like a big fan of Seth Rogen, but like, man, he was cooking with that movie. Like he was just
Yeah.
like,
It's been a very long time since I've seen it, to be honest.
he's just like, bro, we got to make like a great comedy movie,
They don't exist anymore.
And his buddy was like, yes, we need to do that. And he also has a Goon poster in the background, which is awesome. I actually read The Goon last year. It's great. I love The Goon. Like, it's just so much fun.
I do want to find there's a line of comics that I want to read. It's called Philadelphia.
Oh yeah, I read the first volume of that. It's pretty good. The art in it is incredible.
I really want to, and the artist is from Philadelphia, so.
Oh well, yeah, he's a good artist. I think his
want to
name's like
support.
Jason Sean Alexander. I think.
And I just love the idea of like people in Philadelphia becoming zombies and
Well, they're
vampires and
vampires,
shit.
but, yeah.
Yeah. Like I'm like, all right. Well, if you grew up in Philly, you could understand a lot of these isms.
My favorite part of Superbad is when Jonah Hill dances with the lady at the party. It's just so fucking hilarious because he's just like standing there like, what? And he just fucking goes with it and he just starts going along with and Big Papa's playing in the background. I'm like, this movie is the greatest freaking thing I've ever seen. It's like, yes. Also says, I'd say my high school experience was like your typical ghetto high school film. Jeez, man. I actually got in trouble in my job for using ghettoized in an article because I guess that was a little offensive.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't know. I was like, you know what? Fine. I'm not gonna fight it because it's like, I could be one of those like one of those people on Twitter who like doubles down when they say something stupid
and makes it worse.
Yeah, and I'm like, you know what? It's not worth it. If they want to take it out, fine. Though one of my friends who's like on the like woke side was like, Britton, you should know better than this. And I'm like, I was making a point about animation, but fine, please lecture me. It's not condescending at all. I still love her though. She's a good person. She's doing her thing. She's listening to Taylor Swift. Hello, Helena. And yes, Superbad is awesome. Oso clarifies, I wasn't in a gang or anything. I just grew up around all that BS. I'm like, oh man. That is that happens so much in like American high school movies. That did not happen to me. Like most of the bullying I had was like verbal.
I had more of it in middle school than high school. At high school,
Same.
I just didn't care. Like if you don't like me, I don't give a shit. Like and also because of what my father used to do for fun, being a professional fighter when I was younger, people didn't mess with me.
Indeed, McLovin is great. Like, Fole's awesome. Like,
and my father taught me certain things for a reason. So, I only had to use them twice, and that was in college.
Also, do you mean you get McLovin? What do you mean? Which man are you talking about, McLovin? Because like McLovin's great. Geez, you go to like a Catholic school? Because like I know like the Catholic schools like are stereotyped. They have like rulers and they'll like smack your ass with it.
It depends on what years you went to. I have family members who went to Catholic school, and yeah.
Demodrick. Oh man, super bad. Seen that movie like 15 times. I've seen it like 2 or 3 times. Like, you know, it was good. I enjoyed myself. You know, I didn't go to like parties. I went to like gatherings. And you know,
Yeah.
I actually went to a restaurant the other night and they had cornbread. And I remember going to one of those cornbread, and this dude who I would go to one of these gatherings with, he made the greatest fucking cornbread I have ever had in my life. Like, it was fucking just delicious. And like my friend who had the party at his house, like he would also had cornbread. Tasted like stale, like, you know,
Stale bread.
Stale bread. Yeah, like
Yeah.
cardboard. And I didn't want to like say anything, but then the guy showed up with his like phenomenal cornbread. I was like, yes.
He was taught right.
Yes, you know. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Alicia. It sounded
No,
like you were
you're
about to say
fine.
something.
You're fine. Yeah, I didn't have like, I guess I had the typical experience. I had, you know, when we were younger, people used to pick on me, and I just didn't give a shit anymore. Like, because I was in a wheelchair and shit, like nobody, I'm like, whatever. It's okay.
I mean,
But
I
it's
read
so
a-
funny. It's so funny now because I just got a like an invitation to like I'm gonna age myself, my 20 my 15-year thing, and I'm like, I don't want to go. Like,
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way. Like, if I have a high school reunion, I don't know if I want to go, man. Like,
well, here's my thing. Like, I understood why my parents went, because my parents graduated like before social media and everything. But like nowadays, everything's on social media, so why the hell would I go to pretend to care about whatever?
Colton, garlic bread is very good, especially when you get like lobster and you smack it on there and you eat it. Just
Garlic bread is good with anything.
some good. It's good.
Garlic bread is
Good.
basically good with every meal. If you grew up in an Italian household like I did.
Oh well, yeah, that makes sense.
But yeah, like I have no ill will towards anybody, but like I don't want to pretend that we were friends because we're not.
Yeah, you know, I hate in those movies when they're like, "Oh, what are you doing?" And I'm just like, I'm writing and doing like booktube. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
that's so like it's so patronizing. I'm like, no.
Yeah, I'm just
No.
I'm good. Like I have nothing bad against anybody, but like why would, and it was really funny because I went to school near a beach town. So they wanted to like rent out a house for everybody to stay at.
I'm gonna scheme. I'm gonna scheme to keep Colton here. But you know, I don't know if Colton saw my my video on Talking Stories town square that they do. I did say to get everyone, I did threaten people to read
Which one?
Speaks the Nightbird by Robert McCammon.
I've heard of it. I've never read it.
Oh, it's so good. It's very good. It's a very good book. Cheesy garlic bread is also very good, Helena. This is the objective. Yes. This is the objective take right here.
And you can roast your own garlic to do better garlic bread because it tastes better. It's not hard to roast your own garlic either.
Yeah, I asked my parents. I'm like, so like, you know, in all the gangster movies, they like eat all the time. Like, is that true? And they're like, yeah, Italian families just eat. They love food.
Yeah, there's some stereotypes that are correct. Well, let me put it this way: it's not the eating; it's the excuse to get together.
Oh well, that's fair. I know they're very family oriented.
Yeah,
you know?
It's the excuse to get together, so it's always around food.
Yeah, Demodrick followed me on Twitter, or not Twitter, on Instagram. I really like her or his their profile pic. It's It's Patrick Bateman wearing a
God.
White Sox hat.
Oh God.
You know, I was actually talking with someone the other day about the book and movie of American Psycho. I'm like the satire's there in the book, but man, the book is dark. It's really
So is the movie.
there's like a tongue in cheek, you know.
Yeah.
There's like a tongue in cheek nature of it.
It was
Oh,
one of
no.
those things I watched it and I was like, I don't get the hype. Like, okay.
Oh, I think it's great.
like
it's,
I was
it's
just,
real
I
fun.
was like, I don't. Am I missing something? Because I just don't get it.
I know Demodrek's speaking the truth here. Like they're so right. Like it is so hit and miss. Like
Well, it is also another part of it going off of the hit and miss is it's how it's made. A lot of people make it very differently.
it's like like bad cornbread is like cardboard. You know, it's bad.
Yeah.
No, it's
Garlic bread
like,
is amazing, and garlic bread is the best bread to make sandwiches on. Just FYI.
I do like garlic bread. My family made chicken spaghetti once, and and they had garlic bread. It was very delicious. I thought it was like that cheesy spaghetti, and it was like, yes, this is good. You know,
That sounds good.
I'm hungry now.
I need to make pasta. I haven't made pasta in a really long time.
Why are we talking about food all of a sudden? This is a book too.
Because it is 6:05 my time. PM.
It is food. Oh my god, you're talking about cheesy garlic bread while watching Superbad. That sounds like a fun time. Sounds like a fun time, actually. It's just like one of my comments blew up because on Instagram, because the other day I was watching a clip of like a David Lynch thing. I think it was Twin Peaks, and I looked at it, and it has a trans woman. I'm like, is that David Duchovny? And like everyone was like, yeah, that's David Duchovny. And I'm just like, oh wow, I didn't know he was in like a David Lynch project. Is he in Twin Peaks? He's like, yeah. I'm like, oh, that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I've never seen Twin Peaks, but I'm just like, because I know David Duchovny, you know, from the X-Files.
X-Files all day.
I guess it's appropriate because, you know, he was also in a show about a massive conspiracy, though. Twin Peaks apparently is weirder because, you know, it's David
Twin Peaks was weird. It was fascinating, but it's weird.
Like I've seen scenes from it, like I've seen scenes from it, like the little guy in the red room, and like apparently like they did the audio backwards, and then they did the backwards audio forwards. So it sounds really weird.
They did some really crazy stuff with that one.
What is this? This is so bizarre.
I think you can watch it on Paramount Plus, I think.
I've heard that. I might have to try it someday. You know what I need to catch up on because I have HBO Max. I'm paying $2.99 for it right now.
Sweet.
Get Millie Black from Marlon James because I watched the first episode. I'm like, man, this is cooking. And then
I didn't know he had a show.
Yeah, it's new. It came out last November.
Okay, I'll have to look.
And I was like, man, I need to catch up on that because like now I'm just sitting here and I've thrown money at the HBO Max.
I need to finish watching Doctor Who.
Yeah, I've been bad at keeping up with Doctor Who. Twin Peaks had the hottest girls in the world. You know, I've seen a couple of the ladies in that show. They are really beautiful. Like, I don't know where David Lynch found them from, but like, good on you, man. That's all I'll say. It's just, man, you know. My friend Iskandaria, Alex from Iskandaria. I don't know if you've watched his channel, but he was apparently they're doing The City in the City in Broken Binding now, and he's like,
okay,
what do you think of The City in the City? I'm like, The City in the City is a really great start if anyone's interested in China Mieville at all. So if
the only one that I have is Perdido.
Like if you're kind of wary of Perdido and it's like weird bug people, you know, that weirdness, then read City in the City. It's more comprehensible.
And I do have the one that he wrote with Keanu Reeves.
You know, I've wanted to read that, but I'm like, man, like what is that gonna be like? You know,
It's connected to his
Berserker, yeah.
and that was just
Black Leopard Red Wolf is
that was too much. I was
Yeah.
just like, that was bloody for the sake of being bloody. Like, there's no point to it. It's just, I don't.
You know, I'll put it this way: I'm actually doing a buddy read right now, or I'm like overlooking a buddy read right now with John Minton or not John Minton, because John Minton hasn't read it, but his wife Amy is reading it. And I'm like helping her along, you know, kind of giving some context, you know, ideas that I have about the book, and she's really digging it, and she's reading Moonwitch Spider King right now. So
I have them both. I like having the audio because of the patois.
Yeah, I stupidly didn't do either of them on audio, but I think getting it on audio and like trying to immersion read it, I think that would be
That's what I'm trying to do. I just they were on sale.
That's what I'm going to do with A Brief History of Seven Killings anyway,
Yeah.
when I read it, probably this summer.
The Brief History of Seven Killings is, from what I've read so far, is fantastic.
I have no idea, but that's a really bizarre shared universe if that were the case. Because like The Wire and the X-Files and Twin Peaks are like really different things.
The Wire is fantastic.
Yeah, The Wire is basically realistic Law and Order, because like Law and Order
Wire's realistic downtown Baltimore.
Pretty much that too, but you know, it's,
as someone who grew up not far from there, it's very realistic downtown Baltimore.
Colton, that is the objective good take right there. It's just letting you know that it is a great book, though.
No, it's just one that I need to get to. I know. That's
yeah,
kind of why I'm doing the buy what I own this year.
I didn't get the audiobooks for either of the books. Maybe when I reread them, which I hope will be at some point in the future. Especially Moonwitch Spider King, because like I don't know, I liked Moonwitch Spider King a lot, but there were parts of it where I wasn't sure if I was fully into the game, you know.
I'm just concerned because of what I've read that's gonna be in it.
Well, you know, I guess it depends. Like, I actually had an interesting idea last night while I was talking with Amy and Natalie, who are reading the book, and I'm just kind of, you know, helping them along.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, you know, maybe because Amy mentioned that, like women that like, you know, Moonwitch Spider King is kind of like a gender swapped kind of look at, you know, Black Leopard Red Wolf. So I'm like, maybe I should have like female readers read Moonwitch Spider King first, and then read Black Leopard Red Wolf and see how that would.
Because that's what I've heard, that it's Black Leopard Red Wolf is from one character's perspective, and then the second one's from a second character's perspective, and then the third one, supposedly from what I read, is going to be both of their perspectives.
I don't know about the third one, but the whole concept is it's basically the same story, just from 3 different people perspectives. But we'll see what happens. My
used bookstore had them, so I picked them up.
That's a fair point. That's good. It's I mean, I don't want to pull him out though.
I want to read his other book, the Book of Nightland.
Oh yeah, it's his. I think that's his like slavery book, which I'm like, oh boy.
I want to make sure I'm in the right headspace before I read
that. Munch is in the X-Files? Really? I don't think I got that far. Huh.
Detective Munch was awesome.
Yeah, I'm just not a fan of like Law and Order, because it's like the freaking Days of Our Lives of crime drama.
I like the original when it was Jerry Orbach.
It's just like, it has that like same just like gray and brown color palette, and I just get depressed while watching it. You know, it's like, at least with The Wire, like there's like a, you know, like there's a point to it, you know. It's like, yeah, this world sucks and it's not going to change anything.
Yeah.
But no, I'm not a Law and Order fan, to be honest.
I put them on when I'm doing other things, because you don't really have to pay attention.
Yeah, that's fair. That's a fair point. But going back to the audio for Marlon James, that's a good idea, because like a lot of his stuff, like if you read it out loud, it really, you know.
Well, he does a lot of stuff in dialect, which is Jamaican patois.
Yeah. So
from
yeah,
the interviews that
I'm
I've
gonna do Brief History of 7 Killings
You
sometime.
need to do Brief History of 7 Killings because there's 7 different types of patois that are discussed in that book. You need
Yeah,
to
I
do
know.
that.
It's
That's one, and I know a lot of people don't do audio, but that's one book that needs it because you need to hear the difference.
yeah, and I mean I read it out loud, so that made it more entertaining for me. Bend has a very based take here. His content is challenging emotionally, but his prose is so beautiful. Love that he's brought up others like Gene Wolfe and loving the puzzles and the language. You know, I've tried Gene Wolfe twice and I've bounced
I
off of him
tried
both
book
times.
1. I tried the book 1 of the whatever his series is, and I
But
was just like, no.
But like I don't know, like with
It
Marlon
wasn't
James,
for
I
me.
really like how I like the puzzles in his work, you know? Like I like trying to figure it out, I guess. I don't know.
I like trying to figure it out, but I need a baseline
Yeah.
to figure
But
stuff
Gene
out.
Wolfe, he's just
And
like
he's not a baseline. Yeah.
freaking
So
throwing shit at you, and you're like,
I'm
whoa,
just
dude,
like,
calm down.
it wasn't badly written. I just didn't care after
It's like, bro, calm down. Can we like sit down and like talk about our feelings? Like, how do you, you know, come
yeah.
on.
It's just like his writing in my brain is like an absolute no.
Like, you know, at least with, you know, with
Some authors, my brain works very well, and other authors, it's like an absolute no.
well, yeah, that's just, you know,
Like I can read N.K. Jemisin all day, every day. I love the way she writes.
yeah, I actually have what's her book? The 5th Season. I've wanted to try that for a while. I just haven't gotten around to it yet.
It's so good.
It's just you know.
But people make it more overly complicated than I think it actually is.
Yeah, I've heard people say that about Malazan, which I'm gonna start
Well,
probably during the summertime. So
that's another one that I'm just like, someone bought me the first book, and I'm like, I don't know if I really want to read this.
yeah, that's I guess that's the rub
I
with
know
Gene
this.
Wolfe.
I know the reason you bought it for me was like my friend who bought it for me was, you want me to read this, but I'm just like, I don't
Like with
think
Marlon
his
James, I
writing is
guess,
gonna
like,
work
you
for
know,
me.
the first line of, you know, Black Leopard, Red Wolf is literally the child is dead. There is nothing left to know. And you're like, okay, what's this child thing
Yeah.
about? You know what? I want to know what this child thing is. Who's the child? Who's this guy talking? What is going on? You know, you want to know, right?
Yeah. I don't like the superiority of a lot of the Malazan fandoms. That's
Yeah,
what's
here's my
kind of not made me want to read it, because I'm like, I don't want to be told that I'm too dumb to understand shit. And okay, this is my biggest complaint about a lot of book series in general. I
smells
hate
like a
when people,
newspaper.
I hate when people say you have to read it more than once to understand it. I'm sorry. No.
Drives me. You know what also drives me crazy, Alicia? When someone goes, "Oh, there's a character in like book 1 who shows up for like 5 minutes. He's important in book 3." I'm like, I don't fucking care about
I
that.
don't like that shit. That literally is making me not want to read it. Like
You
when
know,
people
like
say,
that, like that literally,
you're not
like,
gonna understand it at all on the first read, then you don't even want me to freaking pick it up.
it's like
No.
if I pitched Black Leopard, Red Wolf as like, hey, there's a character in it called Sagalon, and she's in it for like a good about a third of the book. She's really important in book 2. Like, people are gonna be like, who fucking cares?
Yeah. I
But
just don't like. And I love if it's someone's favorite series, but I just don't like the discourse that's around it.
yeah, that's fair. I mean, that's one of the reasons I was hesitant to read it for so long is because people are like, "Oh, it's so difficult," or you know.
Oh, and your opinion won't matter until you read the whole entire series twice.
Yeah.
I'm like,
You know, the other day
books that aren't tiny. No. And I don't want to get morbid here, but it's the truth. In the past year, I have realized if I don't like something, I'm not gonna read it. Like we have a finite period of time on this planet. I want to read things that I want to read, and if people don't like that, that's fine. I'm at the point in my life, like, I'm not gonna force myself to read something because people think it's superior or
Is
whatever.
this a line from Malazan? Because I have no context from.
And I'm not trying to like diss
No,
anybody.
I
but
know, Ben.
I'm
It's
at-
just. Oh, sorry, Alicia. I'll let
No,
you
go ahead.
finish what you were saying.
No, we know. It's just the small group of people are loud enough to cover for everybody.
Just ruins everything for everybody.
Yes.
No,
I have friends that are huge fans of Malazan, but they completely understand why I'm afraid to jump into it.
Yeah, no, it's oh, it's a quote from Gardens of the Moon. Yeah, it's just kind of how do I put it? Let me think for a moment.
Well, I hate to be morbid, but like I lost a very good friend of mine this year, and it made me realize that like we don't have finite, like we're not going to be here forever. If you're not enjoying what you read, just put it the F down.
Well, that's a good point. Yeah, that's
like we don't like read
Very
things
sorry
you
for your
want to
loss.
read.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's like with like Marlon James, you just need the one book to get it. You know, like you're not going to get everything. I promise.
But he's
that.
not overly writing it to the point of making it confusing.
Now, I'm maybe Erickson's the same. Again, I'm trying to not put as much judgment on it until I actually read the damn thing.
Yeah,
but,
I'm gonna at least try book 1, but I'm also not going to promise that I'm gonna get to book 10 because those books are big, and there's 10 of them.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I'm just gonna read Gardens of the Moon. If I like it, I'll keep going, and if I don't,
and I'm fine being thrown into shit, but you need to give us a baseline of stuff.
Yeah.
That's my biggest thing is like, I wonder if people are, what's the right word? This might get me thrown off the internet, but I don't care. Like, people put their own thoughts onto what Erickson meant and making him like a deity and not, he's just a person. I'm sorry. He is.
Well, that's with a lot of authors, though.
He's just a person.
A lot of authors.
Like, and it's the same thing with like Brandon Sanderson. If you don't like Brandon Sanderson, people are threatening to kill you. This is ridiculous.
Yeah, that's not okay.
Like, I'm not saying about him the author, because like, he seems like a nice person. I'm saying his fandoms get too much, and I'm just like, no.
Joe.
Yeah, fair.
He's just like in his room, just like he's just like levitating and composing all these books. he's not even typing. Like that's funny.
You did come in at the right time when I was like just going off on shit. So you did come in at a very interesting time.
No, it's just it's I mean, I'm looking forward to Gardens of the Moon. I mean, I said it before, but like what really kind of sold me finally on like trying it is that Erickson isn't as touched by the like Tolkien model of fantasy storytelling, which hey, nothing.
I didn't understand that reference until 2 years ago when I read Tolkien for the first time with a friend of mine.
Well, I'm sorry. I'm just totally going across your head at the
You're
moment.
Fine. No. But it also comes down to like, I considered myself a fantasy reader before I read Tolkien.
Well, yeah, no, there's a couple people who are like that, though. It does sometimes kind of baffle. It does sometimes kind of not baffle me. Like I get if people don't always read Tolkien when they're kids, but sometimes I'm just like, that's interesting. Like,
yeah, because I think people that didn't read it come to fantasy with a different expectation, which I find very interesting.
Yeah, no, but no, my point being, I was curious to see what he'll do because, it's not so touched by that model of fantasy storytelling. Which I'm not saying I'm against the idea of like Tolkien, inspired, like, Game of Thrones. Love that.
A lot of stuff is inspired by Tolkien.
Yeah, exactly.
Even if you don't like Tolkien, something you like was inspired by Tolkien.
Sure, though it is kind of funny when they read Tolkien for the first time. I'm like, oh, these are all cliched and stuff. I'm like, yeah, he made a lot of those. Like,
yeah, I read it 2 years ago with my friend Roger. and people should watch his channel because he's fantastic. He needs to get more people watching him. Roger reads. He's great.
No, but I mean that's fair. I know that like my friend Jason didn't take to it, and like that blew up. Like that blew up on his channel, which I thought was
yeah.
fun.
Like I just don't want people like explaining to me how I read it wrong.
You know, it's like
I don't know.
you know, it's like I don't want to get mansplained by the audience.
That's the thing. I've already done that, like with classics of all things. Like, no. And I have some issues with some comments I've seen authors leave on YouTube videos.
And yeah, I don't want people going like, well, Britton, there's a thing in like book 4. Yeah, get to that. I'm like
that I'm just like,
drives me nuts.
I'm fine. Like I've had authors comment on my Goodreads reviews and stuff like that, and that's fine. I'm fine with that. But like, if you're telling me I misread something, like the book is out there, and if people misread it, it's publicly consumable. So I don't know.
No, I don't know how. I'm sure you're being facetious here, but I don't know how many people would misread your books. But okay, yeah.
Because I've had that happen where people have like, you missed the point of it, and I'm like, well, if that's, and I wasn't trying to start a fight, but like maybe the point you wanted to put across wasn't being the one put across.
I was being facetious. Okay.
Oh no, I know you are, because like we've spoken, and you don't have a problem if someone points out an issue with your book, but there are plenty of authors that do.
I did bring this up earlier. I would like to read Joe Abercrombie's The Devils at some point. I just haven't gotten to it yet.
I like him as a person. His books don't work for me.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm probably going to go on for about another 20 minutes before going off, because we've been going on for a little while, but
yeah.
But I'm probably going to go on for another little bit and then I'll get off, but good seeing you. So you provided a good bit of laughs. Well,
have a good evening. I don't know where it is, what time period it is, but you're at evening.
But going back to Malazan, I'm curious to see where it'll go. And also Discworld, though I will say the Discworld fans are really awesome. Like,
that's the thing. Like, there's certain fandoms that are great. Like, even though
I mean, I'm sure there's Jackass Pratchett fans out there, but
sure they're everywhere.
I haven't met them yet. But
no, like with every author, I mean, like they all have their very like over explaining type things. But
like the only thing that kind of just irritated me about that is like, oh, here's these 4 books you could start with. I'm like, man. Or I'll go with, I want to start with I want to start with Mort, and then some of the worst I've gotten is like when I'm like, I want to start with Mort because I've heard death is like pretty base, and people are like, no, death's not really in that book, and I'm like, fine, I'll start guards then. So that's how I came up.
Yeah.
With but aside from that, like the Discworld fans are awesome. Like they're pretty cool for the most part. They're just like, yeah, you just start with
that's the thing, and then there's certain people that like understand that I'm not the biggest fan of Robin Hobb, but don't hate me for it. Like,
yeah, the Robin Hobb fans are pretty nice for the most part too. Though.
Like, you know what I mean? I'm just using that as an example. It's like there are certain times, like I have friends who hate classics, who don't like Jane Austen. I don't stop talking to them. Like, it's just it gets very weird. It gets very weird. I'm just like, okay.
Helena says I started with Mort and it was fun, and Tharnall also said it's a good place to start. So I don't fucking know anymore. I'm starting with guards. Made up my mind. If Discworld fans have a problem with it, they probably don't, because like I said, they're pretty awesome for the most part. Too bad.
I picked your audiobook the other day, so I will be listening to it soon. The Wistful Ascending.
Oh yeah, no, Wistful Ascending's fun. I really enjoyed it a lot.
So I'm looking forward to it. It's going to kind of be my like palate cleanser in between two heavy things.
If you're a fan of Invincible, as I am, or even superheroes in general, you'll probably enjoy Wistful Ascending.
Yeah.
Or if you're a fan of Star Trek Deep Space Nine, you'll probably like that too.
Well, I'm a Star Trek girl, but I grew up on Next Generation specifically.
What else was I gonna say? And Return of the Griffin's good. I know Joe said he's rewriting it, which the other day I was teasing.
Rewriting it?
Yeah, a little like he's like taking some stuff out of it. Like I'll let Joe explain if he's still here, but
If you're here, please explain.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that in like a mean way. I'm just genuinely curious when authors rewrite. I'm curious at like of how that works. Of like,
Helena, I don't know. I haven't read Robin Hobb, but if it's not connecting with you, it's not connecting with you. It happens. Like
I'm sorry. I don't give a shit about Fitz. I'm sorry. I don't care. Like,
oh, okay.
Everything is just horrible that happens to him, and I'm like, I don't want to read horrible things right now. Like, and it's also, people need to realize that it comes from also the period of time that you're reading something in. It might not click with you, and that's okay.
So Joe is explaining there are some flaws on Return of the. Goddamn, I can't. Return of the Griffin. I almost said Guardian.
And that's book 2, right?
Yeah, it's book 2.
Okay.
Which I liked, and I was kind of teasing Joe the other day. I'm like, oh, so I have to reread it now, and he's like, no, you don't have to. It's like the story's still going to be the same. I'm like, okay, good, but you know.
So don't pick it up. Don't pick up book 2 yet. Good to know. Okay.
But book 1's a lot of fun. I enjoy it.
Yeah, I do have book 1 on audio, and I have to say, as someone who has problems with my eyesight, I do appreciate that. I understand audio is expensive, but I do appreciate it.
Yeah, I have Audible, you know. Yeah, that's what Joe told me. He's like, the story's similar enough. You don't have to read it. I'm like,
but right, I'll wait till the new cover comes. I'll wait till the new one comes out then. For number 2 at least. I'll get to book 1 this within the next couple months.
Yeah, I've only read 2, and speaking of that, I need to get Joe on to talk about Return of the Griffin soon. And also, Joe, we need to get on Invincible finally. I know I told you last year we were going to do it, but this year, either like right as Invincible's coming on, we're going to do it, damn it. I'm going to do it if it's the last damn thing I do, you know? Like, come on. But
I know Darko and I spoke about having a discussion about X-Men 97 this year.
Yeah, that's I mean, have fun with that. I mean, the X-Men is, oh man, that's
I'm not okay, let me preface by saying I'm not big into the MCU, but I enjoy X-Men.
So Tharnal, it's Malazan, Discworld, and Gormenghast are the 3 like big series I'm going to be reading this year. So Gormenghast is, I'll pull it out right now. Excuse me.
Find it. It's hard to find. I need to find that series.
It's in this omnibus.
My team won. We're going to the fucking Super Bowl. I'm sorry.
Oh, you're going to the Super Bowl.
Holy shit.
Okay.
Sorry. We don't ever win, so this is like a big deal. My team never wins.
I was a bit, no, I mean, you didn't startle me or anything. I'm just kind of no, you didn't startle me. I was kind of surprised.
I wasn't expecting it. I got a text from my boyfriend.
It's the whole trilogy of Gormenghast in one book. So
where did you find that? Because I'm having a hard time finding the series. Period.
My parents got it on Amazon, so
okay.
Maybe they've.
I'll have to look for it.
Yeah, I know. I told Joe last year. I'm like, hey Joe, we're gonna do a discussion on Invincible, and he's like, oh, awesome. I'll reread the series just in case. And then we didn't do it. So this year, like, at least as it's coming out from February 6th, we're gonna do it. Damn it! I just need to get my friend Ty again on it because he's a huge Invincible fan too. But yeah, no.
I would like to get you on my channel as well once I get to book 1 of your series. Because I like to do author interviews on my channel.
Oh, you mean when I put out my first novel that I wrote?
No, Joe.
Oh, Joe. Sorry, I'm like.
No, you're fine.
I'm just like.
Yes,
dude,
I would. If I still have a YouTube channel when you put your book out, absolutely. You can.
I was about to be like, dude, I'm just editing it right now, but I mean, I appreciate that, but.
And if you need someone else to look at it, I have an copy editing background, so. If you need that.
Yes, I would love to talk. I know. I just need to get everyone together for it. That's the hard thing about doing these discussions. You have to coordinate everybody, you know. It's like, okay, when are you not busy? It's like,
well, and also it depends on like time zones.
Yeah, that too. I mean, like you know, now you and Darko, it should probably be easy because I think both of you are in Eastern time and I'm in Central
East
time.
Coast, yeah.
So it'll probably be easier to like get everyone together, but I'll be like, Darko, when are you not busy? Alicia, when are you not busy? Okay, we're gonna do Bill Street could talk, you know?
Oh, I gotta start that. I can't wait. I actually want to watch the film as well because I heard the film is fantastic. I haven't watched it.
I do too, because Moonlight is a phenomenal movie. And I'm
Yeah,
like,
it
this
is.
dude would make a great James Baldwin adaptation. And then he makes a James Baldwin adaptation. I'm like, dude, this is, oh man.
Well, did you hear that they're trying to do an adaptation of James Baldwin's life right now? They're like fighting with the courts about making an adaptation of his life.
Of what? Of which one?
James Baldwin's life, like
Life.
a biography.
Oh, well, okay. I mean, good luck with that. I mean, it's I haven't read that, but I've only read Giovanni's Room. So.
Oh yeah, you're East Coast too. Sweet. That makes it easy.
Yeah, the show of Invincible, like I love the comics. I mean, I got them right there, but like
I'm new-ish to comics.
the show might even be better, to be honest.
My brother's been trying to get me to watch it.
No, but
I'm also a wimp with like gore and
yeah,
shit.
it is a lot of violence.
Not a wimp, but like okay.
Like it gets intense with the.
There has to be a purpose to it. I don't like violence for violence sake.
Well, okay, it's not violence for violence sake. I'll tell you that, but
okay.
It is really intense.
It's a lot.
Well, to be fair, it's these superpowered beings going at each other, you know, so, you know, it's going to get nasty, but, you know, it's not like gratuitous. Or, well,
yeah, because there's some stuff, like, even though I like it, I'm like, there's no need for it to be that.
Okay, fine. It's not The Boys. I'll put it that way. It's not The Boys.
Okay, because that was the thing I struggled with The Boys. I like the story, but that was a lot.
Yeah, The Boys is for a particular kind of animal. I'm sure Joe can
My brother loves it, so.
No, but let me see. Yeah, it's but yeah, no, Invincible is definitely one of those things. I'm like, I gotta do it. Yeah, that's the thing with The Boys. Like, The Boys is a very acquired taste. Like, you know, you have to like, you know, it's Garth Ennis. So Garth Ennis is like Garth Ennis is a again, he's a particular kind of animal. You have to be like, you know, like Preacher's
what
not
else
for
has he
everyone.
done?
He's done some comics like Preacher. He did Punisher.
Oh, I've seen the show version of Preacher.
Where would you place Astro City between Invincible and The Boys? Huh, that's a good question. Astro City is like, I've only read the first, like right there. I've only read that first Metro book volume. I would say that Astro City is like up there with Invincible from what I've read so far, but like better than The Boys. Yeah, I agree, Joe. But yeah, Astro City is again, I'm only going off of what I've read, but I
definitely need to get more into comics, but I'm diving into Saga this year.
So. Oh, Saga's great.
So yeah, I'm diving into that chunky beast.
That's one of those, like, everyone loves it and it's warranted. It is just like, oh my god. You know? Yeah, it's great. But no, like, because like Reconstruction superhero comics is a thing. So like there's really a lot of great ones. Like DC, The New Frontier is great. All-Star Superman's great, which I'm actually hoping to cover this year because the new Superman movie's coming out.
Who is the guy who's being Superman now?
Like, it's like his name's like David. It starts with a C. Let me look it up.
Because I don't recognize him from anything, and I'm just.
You know what's funny? I didn't recognize him either, but apparently he was in the new Twister movie where he played like a jerk, which was hilarious because
I won't watch Superman that because I like the original so much.
Oh, his name's David Cornsweet.
No clue.
Yeah.
But to me, I know this is a hot take, and I'm not an MCU or DCU person, so take this with a grain of salt. Physically, the look of Henry Cavill is the look of Superman to me.
I would agree with that.
Like, when I think of Superman, that's who I think of.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. Oh, I see. So he was in House of. He was in a couple things I've heard of. He was in Pearl and We Own the City, which is a David Simon project.
Yeah, I don't watch horror. I can't watch horror. I'm a wimp. I can read it. I can't watch it.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, it's
I read it all the time. I love it. Like, you know, some like one of my favorite books of all time is The Only Good Indians.
Yeah, that's a really good book. I've read Mongrels and The Only Good
fantastic.
Indians from Stephen Jones.
They're both fantastic.
You know, I need to see Severance. I'm just like, bro, there's so many streaming services.
There's
like,
too much shit and not enough
I can't
time.
deal with it.
And then I have to and then everybody's like, well, you need to read more books. And I'm like, but there's not enough. Like, with everything that I want to read, there's not enough time. There's just not.
That's fair. You know, I mean, it's.
And then like there's certain things that I have to prioritize, like that I'll be interviewing authors, so I have to get those done first. So
yeah, that's fair. I mean, it's like, I mean, with
I
comics,
don't want to be interviewing an author and not know what the hell I'm talking about.
hey, I've interviewed authors before I read their books, but yeah, I don't generally recommend doing that. So, you know, after reading Speaks the Nightbird and enjoying it as much as I did, you know, I'm sold on McCammon. I'll pick up anything he does. You know, I'm at that point. I'm like, you know what?
I've heard the name. I've never read anything by him.
But yeah, no, he's quite good. But going back to the question I was answering, I would put Astro City up there with like All-Star Superman and well, actually, maybe not All-Star Superman. I'd probably put it with Invincible. Like it is kind of up there. It's not as violent though. So yeah. Take care, Elaine. I'm probably going to be on for a couple more minutes and I'm going to cut it off. So
Yeah.
we're almost at 3 hours, and I generally like, if I can when I'm streaming, at least I generally, my limit is 3 hours at the most. So I'm trying to keep
fair.
That. But yeah, no. Yeah, I mean, my kind of pet project with comics, well, I'm going to be reading a couple Superman comics because of the movie.
Nice.
And I'm going to be reading a bunch of Jeff Lemire comics because, well, I really like his stuff. And I think he's really good, you know?
I have to finish some of the James Tynion runs of stuff.
I did see where you got, or I don't know if you got Sweet Tooth or if you added it to your card or something, but
I got
you shush, Joe.
The first bind up is free if I had because of my Amazon Prime account.
Oh,
so
that's cool.
I'm gonna start that on my Kindle because I can read it on my Kindle faster.
Huh, I've never even heard of that band, the Tin Can Society. I'll have to look that up.
I like the name.
I've not heard of it. Can Society. Well, you know, I would actually, you know what, Tharnal, I'll back up. You know, I would actually put it up there with like it's not as like referential as Black Hammer, but I would say like Black Hammer and Astro City are like kind of a similar tier of comic, though Black Hammer is more meta with kind of how it's more of an exploration of comics as much as it is a superhero story. Oh, actually, yes, I have seen this before. I saw it. I saw Image was promoting the Tin Can Society the other day. Okay, never mind. Yes, I have heard of this. Interesting. Okay, yeah, I'll have to pick that up. Yeah, you know, it's what, but then again, like Black Hammer's weird because it's not really a deconstruction or reconstruction. It's just kind of like, here's superheroes in this context. Like, there you go nuts, you know. Now I wouldn't start. I mean, I'd say Sweet Tooth is a good.
Yeah, I'm gonna. But it was like $30 to buy the bind up, or you could get it for $0 on your Kindle account. Okay.
Yeah, I'm trying to get people to buddy read Sweet Tooth with me because I would like to do a Sweet Tooth read this year. So like, if anyone wants to join in on that, yeah, all right. Yes, I am a fan of Joe R. Lansdale. I haven't read as much of his stuff as I would like. I've only read The Thicket and the first 3 of his Happen
You
Leonard.
need to try Something's Killing the Children.
I have read the first like 3 volumes. It was really good.
It's so good.
It's really, yeah, it's really good. James Tynion kind of irritates me sometimes with like some of the shit he says on Twitter, but he's a very good writer though.
Yeah,
So.
I ignore a lot of stuff people put on Twitter because I'm trying to get off Twitter. Because Twitter's a
but going back to Colton's question, yes, I do like Youre Lansdale. I would recommend reading Happen Leonard, or if you want to stand alone, try to Thicket. It's basically his kind of Youre Lansdale True Grit, which is a lot of fun. Well, funny you said that, Tharnal. I'm hoping once Slay gets his booktube channel up and running, whenever that'll be.
Is that actually happening?
I don't know when that'll happen, but I'm hoping it'll happen. He's saying that he would like to do it at least late 2025 or at least early 2026. So we'll see if that happens. But he said if he does get it started, he would like to read Fables with me and Darko. And I haven't read Fables yet. So
is Fables the reimagining of like Snow White and stuff?
Yeah, it's where they basically are chilling out in in New York City, basically.
I hope they did New York correctly. No, okay. I'm not trying to be that person, but this bugs me. There's a book because I'm from like Philadelphia, South Jersey area. That's where I grew up. That's not where I live now, but that's where I grew up, and it'll always be home. I got sent this book, and it said "The Wild Women of New Jersey." I was like, "Cool, it sounds fun." I look up the bio. The author's not even from New Jersey, and that bothers me so much. She's from LA, and I'm like, no, just on that alone, I'm not reading that. Absolutely.
No, you know what? I actually get that. I'm the same way about Grapes of Wrath. You know,
it bugs me.
I'm from Oklahoma, and it's just like Tharnal. I have no idea.
Find out where you are in Oklahoma because my best friend lives in Oklahoma.
I'm in Oklahoma City, the
Okay.
Bethany area. Also Tharnal, I have no idea if Something is Killing the Children is done. I've just read the first.
As far as I know, yes. As far as I know, I could be wrong, but as far as I know, Something Killing the Children, the last volume that came out is it, from what I've heard. I haven't gotten that far in the Something's Killing the Children yet, but
anyway, Colton, going back to Youre Lansdale, I hope that's helpful. But for Something is Killing the Children, I have no idea. There's a ton of series that are out there that
14 or I think the 15th one is the last one, but I could be wrong.
I don't know.
For Something Killing.
I do think that because James Tynion is kind of fascinated with the idea of like thought forms. Like if you believe in it, it becomes real. I find he does that concept better in Something is Killing the Children than his other one, which is called The Department of Truth, which is basically, hey, every wacky conspiracy theory that's been dreamed up by the crazy minds of people, they all exist. It doesn't work as well, in my opinion. Anyway.
He's doing this really interesting.
Really like how he did it in Something is Killing the Children. He doesn't over-explain it.
He's doing this reimagining of a lot of horror characters. Like he did a 4 comic book run of his take on Dracula, his take on The Thing, and they're really interesting.
I was about to say, awesome, Colton. Very glad to hear. Very glad to hear that. Well, I'm glad you liked The Department of Truth. I liked it. It's just I thought it was a bit uneven from what I read of it, and also again, he just kind of over-explains the concept, which is that's just kind of a personal pet peeve of mine as a reader, is when you over-explain your concept, because
fair.
There's like a lack of trust there that you know. I think Something is Killing the Children is more like, you know, natural with like, okay, this is how it works. Like these monsters are yada yada.
And if you're a theater person, he has a 4 bind up run of this comic called The Backstagers. It's all
I've heard of this. Yeah.
It's all about working backstage at a Broadway show. It's fantastic.
But yeah, I mean, it's just kind of. What are some other comics I got back here? I mean, I for a Year of Lemire so far, I've only read Essex County, which was awesome. Really good stuff.
I've never
Yeah.
heard of this Lemire that you're doing.
Yeah, it's interesting because he's pretty popular in like comic circles, but like, you know, BookTube doesn't really talk about like American comics very much.
No, they don't.
So, you know, a lot of people are gonna be like, who? But
And a lot of the manga doesn't get covered either. There's certain ones that get covered a lot and other ones don't.
yeah, like One Piece, I'm like, oh my god, man. Like,
I'm tired of hearing about it, and I'm sorry. If you love it, that's fine. That's fantastic. I watch it with my brother. That's one thing that we still do, even though we live in different states. We watch it. But I just don't care.
One Piece is, but yeah, I did Roughneck the other day, and like barely anyone saw it, and it made me kind of sad. But I'm like, you know, it's not too shocking, but
well, it's also frustrating when you work on something and no one watches.
yeah, no, I
get it.
think Joe watched it because he was like liking and retweeting it. So thank you, Joe, if you're still here.
But it's just like Monster doesn't get enough play, I don't feel, on the internet.
Oh, Naoki Urasawa's Monster?
Yeah.
Oh man, that's a great series.
Love that one. And it's done. It's 9 volumes and it's done.
Oh, and Tharnall watched it. So thank you, I did see your comment, Tharnall. I appreciated that. That was and he also like Tharnall, man, he was just gonna pick up all these comics you're recommending. I'm like, oh great, thanks. It's glad to hear it.
Yeah.
I probably should have gone on where to start.
I'm just reading everything I own.
Probably should have done where to. Probably should have started with where to start with Jeff Lemire, but it is what it is. But I mean, if I could say where to start with Jeff Lemire, probably Sweet Tooth or like one of his like standalone comics, like Roughneck, to get like an idea.
I'm gonna try Sweet Tooth because it sounds interesting.
Yeah,
it scared me at first when you told me the name because there is a horror book called Sweet Tooth about a demented child, and that book was an absolute no for me because of the content that happened to this little kid.
Has no money in life. I need a review of Genro the Wolf Brigade. It's so rare to have intertext well utilized in anime. Plus, it's all hand drawn. I haven't heard of that actually. I don't watch a lot of anime, unfortunately.
My brother's been yelling at me to finish some animes. I'm like, I know.
Yeah, the weeaboos kind of took over BookTube. Which is, you know, it's fun. It's nice to talk about like manga. I mean, Monster kind of blew up.
Monster's fantastic.
Have you read Pluto from Naoki Urasawa?
No, the only thing I've read from him is Monster. And I loved it.
I think you'll like Pluto if you liked Monster. Pluto's great.
But I also just like that like Criminal Minds type stuff.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I really like that I like his illustration style because it's like, oh my gosh, thank you. It's not the weird anime shit that I'm always irritated by. You know, they look like people.
And the weird anime stuff that they specifically do with women characters.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm like, sorry, yes, I know that's basic of me to say, but it bothers me. I'm like, no. I was watching one with my brother, and the character just sounded like she sucked on helium, and I'm like, I can't do this. I can't. And this thing goes for 7 seasons. I'm like, I can't do this. It sounds hard. Like it's not a bad anime at all. But I just like for 7 seasons listening to that voice, I couldn't. No.
Hey man, whatever you don't want to watch, it's like you don't want to watch. Like that's fair, man. I'm not gonna, you know.
It's just like the stupidest things bug me, and I'm like, I'm out. I can't.
Yeah. You know what you were saying earlier about getting bugged by people who are writing about your state and they're not from there. It's kind of like me with Grapes of Wrath. I just get kind of irritated with the book because it's like, oh.
There's another one. Hold on. It was written around the same time as Grapes of Wrath by someone who grew up in your area. Hold on. It's on my wish list. Give me 1 second. And it's by a woman, and it was buried because it came out the same exact time as Grapes of Wrath. And then he later admitted that he took, because the same publisher had both books, he took some inspiration from this woman's
Joe,
work.
I don't know how you do what you do. Like, how do
How do you
find
have
all
time?
this
Please
time?
teach me.
Yeah, I know exactly. Like, how do you?
And I don't mean that as like a shady comment. I really want to know, please.
Yeah, Joe's just gonna show up and like have his, just open up his waistcoat and be like, "Here's all the time in the world, baby."
Yeah, please.
Um,
Yeah.
no, but I mean, yeah, I'm so picky with manga because, like, man, there's so much like weird anime shit in manga that I'm like, man, I just don't want to deal with that right now. Like, I'm real. Come
I
on.
think it's funny that like they're turning a lot of stuff into manga, which I think is cool. Like they're doing classic, like I just saw the other day in a bookstore a manga version of Pride and Prejudice. I'm like, I love that. If it gets a kid that wouldn't normally read a classic into reading a classic, go
They've been
for
doing.
it.
I mean, I haven't seen manga. I saw a manga version of Frankenstein, but I've seen a couple of like comics
I
for
think
both, like
that's so cool.
Great
Like that's
Gatsby, and they did
yeah,
One to Kill a Mockingbird, and
I love it.
That's cool. Cowboy Bebop's my favorite anime of all
Cowboy
time.
Bebop is where I started with anime, and Ghost in the Shell were the first two that I ever watched.
Yeah, Ghost in the Shell's great. I enjoy that film. And Joe says I write fast. Okay. Oh man.
Where do you have? I asked my friend who's a horror writer now. He's a teacher in real life. He runs his own publishing company, and he writes books. He has like 3 come out a year. I'm like, sir, how do you do this? I don't understand. And you're a teacher. That's exhausting. My mom was a teacher for 10 years. It's exhausting.
Well, it's not really much else to do, but it has been 3 hours, so I am probably going to call it for today. Alicia, I know Raph isn't here, but Raph, if you get to the end of this, which he probably won't, because hey, we all got time on our, we're all doing our own thing. But thank you everyone for showing up to.
Thank you for the
Not
invite.
having a pub. We'll do it ourselves, which is an Avengers joke for anyone who caught that. But Alicia, also, thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
It was fun. It was fun, and maybe
And
we'll do
thank
this
you
again.
for not hating me for my hot takes.
No, never. But never, Alicia. I will never hate on you for your hot takes. But maybe if Matt does not have other pubs sometime in the future, we'll do some more.
We'll
'Cause I
hop
actually
on.
like streaming. And I like going on Matt's show, and I think Matt will come back next week, so it'll be fine. But we'll see what happens. But anyway, I hope everyone enjoyed this. I enjoyed hanging out with everybody for a while. I have some other things I want to do today. I mean, I would love to stay on here all day, but I have other things I want to do today. So yeah, take care, everyone, and hope you have a good rest of your day. So yeah, until next time. See you on Monday.
Night.